Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. Beautiful, beautiful Tuesday. Welcome. Good to see all of you here. We're in a brand new month. Today is June 3rd, 2025. Good to see you all, and also happy Pride Month to all of you. I decided to wear my rainbow tie, so it's going to be a great day. It's going to be a great 30 days. Just to see, good to see all of you joining. Just to let you guys know, the Jaybefaunt channel is also part of Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you guys can find me there for the Savvy and JB show, as well as the JB show weekly. If you guys have not already, go ahead and give a like to the stream. This helps me out very much, especially we're trying to reach more people to be able to inform, inspire, encourage, and activate so that we can be able to reach more and be able to change the system as we see it. So thank you very much for that. Also, have you guys subscribed to my Substack? Why do you want to do this? Well, because you guys get email notifications whenever I go live, upload clips, or write any articles. So you guys have that there. Jaybefaunt.substack.com. There you go. Also, if you guys want to give any reactions out of me, you guys can go ahead and go to QBounty. I can do either reactions to questions or video reactions as well. And I do a video response just like this. So you guys can go to qbounty.com/Jaybefaunt. So whenever I have a guest, I want to be very respectful of their time. And so while we're at it, it is so good to see all of you here. We're going to be talking about a few things right now, and we're going to be getting into, let's go over some of the subjects that we're going over, and then we'll get into our first segment here. So as you guys saw from the thumbnail, we will be talking about later in the show about home prices dropping in Florida. It's creating ghost towns. We're going to be doing a reaction to a video that was submitted to me by Roger Meadows. So this is going to be a really interesting subject, something that really I'm going to have to eat crow on. I'm going to have to admit that I was wrong. So we're going to be talking about that. Towards the middle of the show, we're going to be talking about Meta. See, of course, you see Mark Zuckerberg there. Meta getting into defense. This is going to be a very interesting and yet troubling story to get into that I want to get into with you guys. We got to talk about it. But first, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking to activist and advocate Joey Peltier. He has a warning for us. We're going to be talking about how greenwashing and the climate falsehoods can fool us and how we have to be prepared, especially in the wake of corporations and how they move through this system, trying to fool us into thinking that they have solutions to climate change. So we're going to be getting into that subject right now. Corporations going green. Joey Peltier's warning. Of course, we have Joey Peltier joining me right now. Great to have you back. So good to see you.
Ani Buju, Ernest Joseph Upagard Peltier, the third Indigenaka, Makadewa, Makandunjum, and Dunjanaba, Makanakwe, Jiji, and Niniweg. Hi, hello, I'm Ernest Joey Upagard Peltier. I am part of the Black Bear clan from the Turtle Mountain Pembina Band of Chippewa, living here in the deep north of Minnesota. Thank you for having me back on, James. It's been an amazing time, and it's been too long since I've been on your show. I think it's been almost half a year. Gee.
Wow, I'm thinking about it. Yeah, it's been about 6. Wow, it's been about 6 months. Holy crap, man!
Um,
Time flies. It felt like I was like, yeah, I had him on a couple months ago, and you tell, and now I think about it, I'm like, wait a minute, that was almost 6 months ago,
yep, I
man.
think it was end of January, and we just moved into June. I got the chance to speak about how they were releasing my uncle Leonard Peltier, and it was a good little update. We didn't know much then, but he's home now. He's receiving guests. If you want to get on that list, send him a snail mail. His address is being posted around. You can find it quickly on the Indian Collective social medias. It should be up there as a little graphic. But yeah, he's home. It's been a good time seeing him out and about. I can't wait to make my way over there. I still have not. It's been a crazy last 6 months.
Wow. Have you been able to talk to him on the phone and just to speak with him and see how he's doing?
No, I don't have his phone number. It's been a hit and miss. I know he just got a phone a couple months ago. It's just I've been bashing my head in literally with the work that we're doing over here in Minnesota. My sister, my chair of my board, has been working greatly on putting in protections for our wild rice, which is a keystone species for my culture and my nation, the
Hmm.
Anishinaabe Nation and the Ojibwe. And it's been a crazy ride over here in Minnesota. Our legislation is mixed, and honestly, when you're working with either side, it's like working with a snake. So it's been a hell of a last 6 months for us over here. I can't wait for the summer to start. Gina and I have made plans to get our way over there, and the team, our Muckwa team, wants to get over there also. And speaking of Muckwa, I am with a small grassroots Indigenous woman-led organization named Muckwa, which means bear in Ojibwe-Moan. I am one of two co-executive directors. Charlotte Loonsfoot out of the Kawani Bay of Indians in Michigan is our other, and Muckwa envisions a decolonized future with no systems of caste and oppression exist, and all beings thrive for all generations to come. You can find us out at mukwaminkana.org. Sign up for our newsletter. We'll be dropping one this week with details on Muckwa's what we did all last year. And I'm going to tell you, we were busy almost every month. This newsletter, we're going to detail out on where our money came in and how we spent that money also, because that transparency is something that's needed in the movement. And that's a huge part of what I'm talking about today, JB. Greenwashing and the art of looking like the hero while playing the villain. Let's dive into how corporations are cashing in on climate liberation while keeping us in chains. And a
Yeah.
lot of folks,
Mhm.
a lot of folks in the crowd already, are cued in on how big interests are meddling in our movement, sneaking into our infrastructure. The network that JB is a part of, what was once known as the Fred Hampton leftists. And many of you are aware, I just said, I'm Leonard's nephew. He's a well-known victim and political prisoner thanks to COINTELPRO, the government sneaking into our social movements. Honestly, it's plain naive to believe that any of our movements or infrastructures are free from the prying eyes of any three-letter agency, the FBI, CIA, or any of the big money influences that come with that. My first appearance on the show, JB, we explored how hemp could potentially transform our struggling global economy into a thriving local one. And a significant portion of that conversation, of that discussion, JB, we focused on Elon Musk and his high-tech company, Tesla. James, we've been crapping on Elon Musk before it was cool. I'm just saying. We were critical along, highlighting how these advancements that he's been doing are actually far more detrimental to the environment and society than what's being advertised. Think about it. There are issues of slave labor in the Congo because of this, and land seizures here in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and numerous tribes across Turtle Island for those so-called green tech, for those minerals. The system of Western imperialism is a monster. And we all know that those big corporations have infiltrated to the root and to the core of our climate and environmental spaces. And it's easy, really, really easy to call out individuals like Elon Musk, because he's there in our media. He just, he was part of the administration, just luckily out of it now, but also pointing out at Bill Gates and a lot of those billionaires and millionaires that are cruising around in those yachts that are one of the worst ways to to move around Mama Key, Mother Earth. All of these fossil fuel companies and these mineral extraction companies who are actually eating up our green subsidies and using those subsidies and using their business to manage that just transition in the economy, that green economy that I'm so invested in, and prolonging that transition to that just and sustainable economy. They designed it. And to explain how that's being done, it brings you down into a rabbit hole of a diversity of tactics that they've came up to squash us. One of a great resource that you had just up on the screen, JB, was the Hoodwink in the Hothouse pamphlet. And that pamphlet, I had it here. It's a small little pamphlet, something easy to read and quick. You can get it for free at climatefallsolutions.org, and it covers the individual propaganda points and the solutions that we are being sold by these corporate figureheads, so that they can manage and manipulate that market. And in that pamphlet, in the Hoodwink in the Hothouse, it actually goes into solutions that we can fix the system. That's something that we've actually used directly in my work here in Minnesota. We just went over how we are working on pushing legislation to protect our wild rice. And the alliance that we are working here in Minnesota, it is well over 30, 40 some climate organizations and religious organizations that are helping us do this work. And our leadership, Owen, Leanna, and Gina, they all decided to base any of the legislation that we are pushing through this alliance this year off of the Hoodwink in the Hothouse pamphlet. A little brief on that pamphlet. This comes from grassroots organizers and grassroots organizations that put this together with environmental scientists. And it was something that we needed because of the corporate establishment taking over the narrative and taking over the conversation on how we move forward. Just a brief, going into that rabbit hole, the nonprofit industrial complex, and exposing that, why the wealthy are the real beneficiaries of the charities that we are doing, of the work that I'm doing. This is something that impacts me and effing pisses me off. One of the major issues we are finding is funding. It's hard to find funding. We simply can't compete with the wealthy. And honestly, many of us are struggling to maintain a decent standard of living, much less build up a financial reserve to defend our rights and common sense in court, because we always end up in court on these issues. Historically, we've banded together and pooled our resources to take on the corrupt corporate system, beginning in this colony with our unions, and later on establishing a legal and tax framework for these charities to ensure the transparency. But is it really transparency that the system entails? For those charities, which we like to call nonprofits, not-for-profit, or foundations, and the legal term is a 501c3. And just to tip the iceberg, there are the 501c4s, which are also known as political action committees, PACs, commonly known as. And the system is crafted to keep a tight grip on our communities that are driving these organizations for us. If there's any cash flow, you can bet Big Brother is watching and ready to step in and dictate how we use those funding or funds, and to make sure that we're keeping nice and cozy for the status quo. So let's break it down, shall we? Here in Minnesota, honestly, in also most states, the laws are regulated regarding funds and fundraising, and pretty much on the same page. If a community group decides to raise, say, let's say over $1,000, guess what? They now have to deal with some mandatory reporting registries, which means more work and extra fees. For example, my organization had to register with the Secretary of State's office, Steve Simon's office, every year. And that original filing fee, it was about $80. I have to go in there and renew that every year just to make sure we're good with the Secretary of State. Furthermore, I have to also file with the Attorney General's office, Keith Ellingson's office, where we had to cough up about $30 annually. On top of that, our fundraiser, or a lot of people know him as our grant writer, well, there's a fee to come with that. She has to pay about a $200 fee every year. Like that 80 and that 30 beforehand, that was a one and done. I'm pretty sure that 80 is a one and done with the Attorney General. We'll see next year on that one. But our grant writing, she has to pay that $200 every year. And then on top of that, she has to send a report to the Attorney General's office just in case we snag any of those grant monies. It has to detail on what we plan on spending that money on and where it goes. And if she's attached to any of that money itself. If we drop the ball on this, JD, we could be looking at something serious like RICO charges and civil penalties, not to mention getting kicked out of any leadership role, being barred from actually in nonprofits. You know, we just recently found or heard that Donald Trump was barred from leading any charities in New York. That's something exactly that's exactly what's happening for all of our organizations. If you drop the ball on how you spend those money, you can get banned and barred from actually participating in that system anymore. Grants, you know, I like to say that my organization's grassroots and micro grant funded. Grants are a huge problem in nonprofits. A lot of times you have a huge complex where gift giving office, which is the grantor's office that is gifting out the grants. Those offices are typically staffed with PMCs, the professional managerial class, that requires you to have certain qualifications. One of them, a lot of one that we're finding a huge hurdle within Muckwa is that you have to have 2 years of books. You know, you have to have finances on the books for 2 years before you can qualify for a lot of these grants. They don't take you seriously otherwise. And then, like I said, they have these qualifications. Where have your workers do their training? What educational qualifications do they have? And what kind of metrics are you gauging your programming off of? On top of that, what are you talking about? What issues are you pushing? Is this issue something that the grantors want to cover? And a lot of times when these grant making or these gift giving offices receive a grant from an organization like Muckwa, a grassroots organization, you know, we get turned away because of all of the gatekeeping that's going on. And while you have these professional managerial class sitting in these positions, they also hold the mentality of the corporate establishment. They want to ensure that you're not going to be crossing the line on the things that you're covering. For instance, we battle pipelines. That's something that's known. But if we battle a pipeline that, for instance, is a carbon pipeline, there are some gift givers that will not give us any funds because it's a carbon pipeline, and supposedly carbon capture is a green solution. But as you can see in Hoodwink in the Hot House, that carbon capture, that whole system, that whole calculating on numbers on how many carbons have been taken out, that's nothing but humble jumble math. But things like that, if you cross the narratives that these corporate donors are wanting us or pushing, then you will not get those grants. And that's something that Indigenous and Black-led organizations are hugely getting impacted with, because we are the ones on the front lines. We are the ones on the front lines. When we talk about the climate in general, this is what spurred my conversation with you, James, to get me on the show, is when we talk about climate, people look at those people like Elon Musk and Bill Gates and associate the climate with rich people, the climate movement with wealthy people that are managing and manipulating the industries to keep where it is. That is not the climate movement. The climate movement is Indigenous and Black communities and communities of color. Why? Because that's where all of these rich people are putting these extraction projects and where they're digging up all of our minerals from. It's where we live. That's where, and James, we can talk about it. How did we get into these spots where they're now dumping all of these extraction projects at? We can go into redlining, how all of us were redlined out of these predominantly white neighborhoods. And that's why you have these refineries being built up in Texas, right in Black communities, right in Chicano communities. That's the challenge. What we face is that people think that, oh, you're Greta Thunberg, and no hate on Greta, she's doing some amazing stuff right now, but it's like you're that naive rich person with privilege that has nothing to say, who's cruising around on their yachts. That's not me. That's not who that's not what I was taught, and that's not my focus. I don't consider myself a climate activist. Actually, I really hesitate, because I'm your average Joe. I don't know shit about, part of my language, but about the numbers of necessary carbons in the atmosphere to keep us in a healthy, safe range, or the ozone layer being eroded away in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and how that happened and how that got fixed. I'm not your climate scientist, so I don't like to say I am a climate activist. I'm an environmentalist, and to me, that's focusing on the environment, like our local communities, the environments that we live in. And that's why I say, the climate and environmental fields are the Indigenous, Black, and Chicano, the communities of color, because that's where they're putting it. And we focus on not the numbers of the fancy scientific numbers. We focus on the actual real life damages that we can visually see that's happening to our surrounding areas. During line 3, we saw, the frack outs. We heard the dry drilling into our bedrock without water because we were in a drought. We see the damages that they're doing. We see the foam and the chemical offsets of these frack outs that they've done, the several frack outs during line 3. We see the damage, the poisoning, the salting of our fucking fields, pardon my language, but with these oil spills. I'm an environmentalist because I see the damage. And that's with the Black and the Indigenous and the brown communities. We live in the damage. That's why we are moved to advocate. We're advocating for our communities. And the wave, and that over the last 20 years, I would actually, say a lot attributed to Standing Rock, the No DAPL push, wave of grassroots organizations have sparked up. And that's where a lot of these gift-giving offices, a lot of these grant-making grants are designed to keep us out. They're designed to, they say that we qualify, but we go through and we get denied and denied and denied. I looked briefly before the show on the amounts of grants that we filed last year, and we were in about almost 100 grants that we filed last year, and we only got approved for 4 of them, 4 or 5 of them. Yeah, it's ridiculous, and so you can't do this work without, you know, being able to survive, and you can't survive in this colony without money. And it's simple as that. You can't do this work without paying a wage and getting a wage. I have to, you know, I'm in the middle of looking for a side job. I told you I'm I'm a co-executive director of MUCWA, but a lot of our work is done volunteer. A lot of my work has been done volunteer.
Yeah.
That goes to the majority of Black and Brown organizations across Turtle Island. We don't get the funding, but we still do the effing work. We still do the effing work. And the false solutions is something that is detrimental to our push, because we're losing the faith in the community around us, and we're losing, you know, our base, because they see Elon Musk and they've heard, you know, a huge push was those Teslas for the last 10 years because, you know, the government has been subsidizing his business.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear the Republicans, not to play left or right or red or blue, but you hear the Republicans rightfully calling us out for false solutions that our organizations and our left leaders are pushing. These false solutions, you know, they cause so much detriment. Going to legislation about 4 years ago over in Germany, which is greatly impacting the German economy right now, is the transition over to a more green steel melting process, which, you know, I'm okay with that. Let's find green solutions to smelt these minerals. What happened alongside of that is there was no plan for the labor to keep their jobs or transition into a new job. So they put in this mandate that all of these refineries for steel had to transition to this technology. But the false solution was leaving the labor out of the conversation. That made the labor of those steel factories effing hate us, that turned them against us. And we talk about the indigenous just transition within the EJ, the climate environmental fields, and that just transition, you can't leave out the economy conversation. You can't leave out the labor conversation.
Yeah.
And you can't leave out how we break up the current global system. And a lot of these false solutions that are being pushed to us, you know, keep us into that that current mechanism.
Mm-hmm. You know, that reminds me of when they were talking to Hillary Clinton. I think it was back in 2016. She was talking about doing climate, more green solutions. And the question was to people who work in the coal mines, okay, so what's going to happen with the coal miners? And she was basically heartless and basically saying, well, you know, we just got to get rid of the coal mines, which, you know, on its face, I do agree. We have to stop using the coal mines. But what are you going to do for those workers? The problem is that, yeah, the workers are, you know, working in an industry that also damages our climate. But at the same time, it's like you have to switch things out. You can't just stop, you know, the economy cold turkey without switching to something, you know, that will actually benefit, you know, them economically as well as us when it comes to the environment. You can't do that. And that's one of the biggest issues with a lot of the liberals, is that they will push forth these climate solutions. And I honestly think that they do know that if they push forward without a just transition, it's going to get rejected. And I think they're counting on it being rejected so that they can dangle that over our heads and go, see, we tried, but the Republicans doing this and doing that. And next thing you know, it's almost like a tug of war, when in reality, there is an answer that would actually satisfy the working class as well as satisfy bringing our environment back into balance the way it's supposed to be. I think we can do both. It's just there is some nefarious things going on, especially with the corporate dictators, where they want to finagle things to make it seem like they're doing something good when in reality they're not.
JB, you look at our fossil fuel and energy producers here in the United States. Yeah, all of the co-ops. A lot of them also are taking green subsidies to create green jobs, to create green energy, those solar panels. And last time I was on, we talked about how these solar panels are attributed to part of the ongoing genocide in the Congo. Well, we have the technology nowadays. We have the technology. We've had the technology for at least 2 to 3 decades to transition. Right now, currently, the U.S. military is purchasing up batteries to put in Humvees and drones. And get me, I am so effing. I am so agitated that they're going into drones to go bomb more people. This solution is doing this. But that's how it's set up, is that they want the market, so when they're ready to transition over, they're going to transition over. And if we actually want the jobs, we're going to have to fight for it. And that's what we're finding out here in Minnesota. A lot of the Alliance Coalition members have been battling the data centers that have been introduced here in Minnesota. There's at least 5 that we talked about during the conversations in St. Paul. And my thought on data centers is, like, I talk to my Siri almost 3 or 4, 5, 6, 10, 20 times a day, asking the weather, asking like how far is this town from my town, asking what movie, just general questions to AI. And these data centers are something that in this day and age is a necessity. But looking at how detrimental they are to environmental and social economies around us, it's terrible. But I know that we've had this technology for 3 decades. These supercapacitors that are outside of these warehouses, they could be made from hemp biogel and hemp filaments, and all you need is aluminum, which is recyclable. These warehouse buildings that are should be sided with hemp carbon-based solar panels to collect all the energy that is needed to produce. Right now, they're at one of the data centers near the cities is asking for 250 industrial diesel-sized generators. And to me, why do you need 250? They're saying it's for an emergency sake, just in case power goes out. But we see with the data centers over in Texas that at least half of them to 2/3 of their data center generators are going nonstop. And that office of the diesel in our air isn't, doesn't match what we can actually make out of green materials. Instead of 250 bio or diesel generators, why don't we go to biodiesel? Why don't we go to solar arrays to make up the missing energy that these data centers need? And speaking about these data centers, we talked about how they're made out of concrete. That is an extracted material. That is, people don't realize that's part of mining. We can make hempcrete. Those buildings could be 10 times stronger than still if we're using hempcrete, and they would absorb carbon in the atmosphere and store it safely instead of having these carbon pipelines, instead of butchering all of our trees, instead of unearthing land and pulling out the minerals that you just want for A, B, or C projects. The technology inside of these data centers, from the microchips that the Democrats a year ago dumped a shit ton of public subsidies into, could be made out of biomaterials. We choose not to, because we are abiding to the corporate establishment and their false solutions that they're selling us. And to put that blame onto the entire environmental and climate movements as if this is coming from us, no. James, this is what's coming from us. These are the solutions that are coming from the movement itself. Don't listen to Bill Gates. Don't listen to Elon Musk. Don't listen to any wannabe climate demagogue who's a billionaire or a millionaire trying to give you a false solution. We've already known for decades that our movements have been infiltrated by the corporate establishment, by three-letter agency, the government. There is the School of Americas. We know that they are trying to control and manage us. What do we do as a nonprofit? Well, I'm sorry, we're up shit with the current administration. I mean, for the folks that are following Greenpeace, you can understand that the administration is currently going after our tax-exempt status. Mind you, I didn't even get into what a tax-exempt status is. Briefly and shortly, to get all of these donations, to get all of these grants, these grantors, these funders, they want to be not charged for giving the money to us. And then we also, don't want tax to do the good work that we're supposed to be doing for our communities. That process takes your articles of incorporation, which are roughly a week's worth of work to do, getting them all signed by your board, excuse me, and then paying a $600 fee to the IRS, waiting 6 to 9 months to get that approved. And virtually you can't get grants without your tax exempt status. Mukwa, we haven't gone through the process yet to get our tax exempt status, and we use the system called a fiscal sponsor, and fiscal sponsor is it's a larger organization that can handle the capacity to go over your financial, over your books, and then also is a pass-through agent for all those donations. For instance, if we get a donation or get a from a funder, it has to go first through our fiscal sponsor before it can come to us. Mm-hmm. Going through those steps, going through those hurdles, trying to keep, all of the logistics and all of the legal warnings that come with organizing in your community. I spoke earlier, JB, you can't do this work without facing a RICO charge if you don't accurately account for the money that you're raising. It's something that moving forward into the general strike is like, how do we do this work without end up sitting in jail for organized crime? To me, to you, James, this is not organized crime. This is me. This is community work. But to our oppressors, this is crime to them. This is something that they want to stop. This is gatekeeping to us.
Yeah, it's wild because it's like, this reminds me of, it's like if you're trying to save the environment, if you're trying to make sure to preserve the environment for future generations, now you're considered to be an extremist. If you're trying to stop a 21st century Holocaust, you're now considered to be an extremist. People look at those of us who are LGBTQ, who we want to love who we want to love, is consenting adults. Look what they try to do to Glenn Greenwald, right? Then we're considered to be extremists in that way. It's so many different things that they're really just anything that is that's helpful to the planet, anything that is helpful to maintaining actual life in the planet is considered to be bad. And really, I find that this is the empire's last ditch effort to maintain its hold by flipping everything on its head and going, what's good is bad and what's bad is good. So death and destruction is fine. It's okay, as long as it puts money in my pockets. But if it maintains and the health of the entire planet, and helps and becomes a catalyst for everybody to be able to not just survive but to thrive. Oh no, we can't do that, because then it affects my dividend checks to me and my shareholders. And that's the part that really grinds my gears, is the fact that in, not even in a perfect world, in a good world, organizations like yours, organizations like many others who are doing the work, not just in climate, but also in mutual aid and things like that, they will be, the government will be pouring billions of dollars into them so that they can do more. In fact, the government will be helping out and doing it
In a
themselves as
perfect
well.
world. In a perfect world, yes. And we need these organizations in a perfect world, because we'd already be engaged and our government would be reactive to our needs. But you're right, James. This is the death rattle of the dying empire. And they're going after every red that they can take from us, and going after the nonprofits who are the movement's infrastructure to actually defend us against these attacks. It's your nonprofits who are fighting this administration in federal courts. This is the only way we can afford it. You and I can't afford to take a federal court case, hire a lawyer to defend us in courts to stop this administration from harming us. It takes our nonprofits, who are struggling as they are, to do this work. And without them, we are left to what? Nothing. Your rights mean nothing unless you can defend in court. That's where your rights lie. We find that in an indigenous country all the time. Every time we battle a court case, it's not us battling it. Truly, honestly, it's not, tribe of this tribe or this tribe or that tribe fighting this state. It's actually the federal government fighting this state to uphold treaty rights and treaty laws, which are part of the federal government, which are part of the United States Constitution. So that's where it falls under. We don't win. Like, we as a tribal nation never have won or in any of these court battles, because it's not us fighting it. Truly, honestly, it's us pushing the federal government to do their fucking jobs. Pardon my language again. I am sorry. I am rolling on a good one right now. And, I'm so sick and tired of it, because we have our elders, our grandmothers, my aunts, my sisters on the front lines who are getting battered and brutalized by this corporate establishment, but they're hired dogs. It was not BlackRock, but it was it was at Steve Prince. Anyways, it was his dogs that were out during Standing Rock, biting indigenous elders, biting indigenous people who were just trying to defend their treaty rights, which is a constitutional protected right. It should never have happened. But we are always ending up in court battles, and who are the ones picking up these battles? It's currently, right now, it's our Ivy League schools like Harvard, who are unlikely allies to the movement. They've never really truly have been, let's be real, but who we're teaming up with as nonprofits, to fight these legal battles. And we're hoping that Harvard and the other Ivy League universities drop us after we get them protected. We need to be also protected so we can continue to do that work. It's a hash mash of craziness going on, JB. And the greenwashing, you don't see, you see it within the red politics, but not as bad as you actually truly see it within your own allies within the blue politics or within the leftist sphere. That's where the greenwashing comes in, and that's the biggest enemies to progression. We worked last year during a campaign year, and a lot of the nonprofits, as it was getting closer and closer to election, were dipping out on us. And our coalition meeting, in mutual organizing spaces. And it's because those grant giving offices that their orgs getting their grants from are saying, hey, you can't work on this. You can't do this or else we're going to pull your funding. Our system is so like corrupted and so taken over, and it's so controlled, but we are at the last stage of a failing empire, and I'm not ready to give up anything in my toolkit that's going to push us over the finish line. And that's why I'm here today, JB, on your show to discuss nonprofits and the false solutions that are coming from us and the attacks that are going to us. A lot, you know, Indigenous nation, we don't like nonprofits. Truly, honestly, we don't. I remember my aunties when we were testifying just a couple months ago in St. Paul, and the Republicans, because this is a huge push from the Republicans, is to strip us our nonprofits. And one of the state senators, he starts bad mouthing nonprofits and how Keith Ellingson going after A, B, and C. And my aunties who are sitting in the aisle are just like, yes, we can't stand them. And to be honest, generally, I can't stand them either. I hate working with national organizations. I do. I won't lie to anyone. Like 350 is on my shit list. They've always been on my shit list. The 350 National, after watching Michael Moore's documentary on the climate organization, if you haven't, take a chance to watch that. It's free on YouTube. It shows that the Bill McKibben's, and I know Bill personally, he's gonna freaking hate me if he sees, but he made millions off of a false solution. He made millions of selling peat moss, which is a bog, and our bugs absorb carbon more so than forests do. And he made millions selling peat moss to big businesses so they can sell it as a side fuel. And I can't stand organizations like that. The reason why we have this book is because of our organizations have been infiltrated and people are trying to make money off of it. Within my organization, my board, on a push from myself, we put through what is it called? Or organizational wide wage, locking everyone in place at $5 an hour if we actually get the money in, and that means myself as executive director, I'm going to be one of the lowest executive directors in Minnesota. I'm okay with that. I'm actually okay with that because I can live off of that. I have a spouse who works full time. We have no kids. I know executive directors within a nonprofit that make $300,000 a year, $100,000 a year. There's one executive director that's in the back of my head who pulls home almost $900,000 a year, $900,000 a year, and to me that's obscene. Like that. What? How? Like I'm stuttering to find words to even explain how I'm thinking about this because it's so aggravating. $900,000 a year is the equivalent of what I'm asking for to fund for a year. That would pay for my 7 staff members and myself, and that's just one executive director. And that's where we go around in this circle of who's sitting in those giving offices, who's sitting in the executive level of these organizations. They are PMC, they're professional managerial class, and they don't want to lose their power, and they don't want to lose that system that keeps them in power.
Yeah.
I'm a college dropout. I'm running an organization. I'm doing all the paperwork. I'm doing all the tax stuff. I'm learning things that you'd learn in your second year of an administrative degree. And I had to learn it with our best friend, YouTube and Google, because that's how we learn in the United States. We're priced out of education. Um, you're There is no way to move up in the movement at the moment because we are locked within these gatekeeping measures. And these
Yeah.
gatekeeping measures are locked within these false solutions. And
Yeah.
it's this vicious cycle. And until we revolutionize the world, and James, we talked about it before, that 2028 cannot come soon enough, and that general strike cannot come soon enough. And
Mhm.
I've said it, that general strike, it's just not one general strike. Hey, we did it for a month and we're done. It's an era of general strikes. We're
Yeah.
talking about 3 to 4 years of 2 to 3 month shutdowns every couple months until we get all of the coalition needs and our community needs met. And we're talking about false solutions and talking about general strike, and we know this is based around the unions. And as much as we can point our fingers at nonprofits, we can take that very same finger and point it at our unions. After Taft-Harvey was implemented in the 70s, our unions have been taken over. And our union members know this. This is why union organizing is roughly 8% of United States citizens. How do we do this as without having the unions and without having the Democratic Party take over the narrative and push their false solutions to water down our negotiations? Learn from your environmental climate movements, learn from your social justice movements on how the corporate establishment has infiltrated us and how they're using us to push their propaganda, to push their narratives, to push their goals, and how truly our grassroots organizations, our small level organizations, are combating them left and right, saying, this is not the way. This is not how we do this. Find some fucking common sense, folks. Do it the right way. And
Yeah.
that's where we're getting to, and that's where the general strike needs to get to, is we need to understand that false solutions will be coming from these major establishment entities. And what we truly, really need to do is get back home. Bring the bring the voice back home. Over here in Makwa, we're doing that. We're bringing it back home. We're starting, we have 4 dens that we're working out of, 4 states that we're working out of currently. And we're working on building our power locally, holding monthly events that, same as R&B does. They're mutual aid events, providing food, providing education. And that's how we move forward. That's how we get to that general strike. And truly, honestly, that's how we combat these false solutions. We have these conversations locally with your neighbors, with your family members on the false solutions that we talk about in Hoodwink in the Hot House. Have that conversation with the person who changes your oil and say, hey, we have a solution that's going to make sure that you have a long-term job, but make sure that your job doesn't damage the rest of us.
Speaking of false solutions, it makes me think of, examples. Like, for instance, a lot of times people talk about, well, I have an electric car. I'm using that electric car. But what they don't realize is, like, what does it take to be able to get the resources for that car? Like, for instance, it's like, okay, so what is the battery made out of? Well, it's made out of lithium. Well, where does that lithium come from? Well, it comes from mines in other countries in the global south. Well, what do we have to do to extract that lithium from those mines? What do we have to do to extract that cobalt and that coltan from those mines? On top of that, what are we doing to other nations of indigenous people in order to get control of those mines? And a lot of times people don't want to talk about it, right? Because they'll talk about, well, I have my Tesla truck. and I'm not contributing to the damage of the environment, but yet you are, because of the lithium mines that are being extracted, and then exploitation is happening to the people of the global south that lithium comes from. And then on top of that, yes, you have that Tesla truck, but at the same time, you're still powering that Tesla truck with energy that's used from a power generator, or sorry, a power plant that uses fossil fuels in order to generate that power. So you're still doing the same damage. It's just you're taking extra steps, right? So it's like, okay, so what do we do? Why aren't we talking to China about how we implement more high-speed rail so that we can actually have more mass public transportation that's more efficient, so that we stop, so we don't have to use our cars as often, so we stop having to fly on jets, which actually harms the atmosphere even more, right? And we stop, or also the interventions that we're doing in these countries in order to extract these resources is using our military, which is one of the largest polluters on Earth. So the thing is like everybody's like, oh well, and the one thing that is beyond me, it's like, why are we choosing to do climate solutions individually when it is a problem that is systemic, which requires a systemic solution, meaning we have to collectively come together in order to do this. It's not going to be done by you having just getting rid of your plastic straws. No, we have to cut these corporations out of the picture in order for us to really save ourselves, because they're the reasons why. It's the corporations, really. Ultimately, it's like, yeah, of course, you're using a plastic straw. It's negligible at best when it comes to damaging the environment. But what they're doing in order to produce all these things that are harming our environment are way bigger. Like Taylor Swift gallivanting across the world in her private jet is actually doing more damage than you ever could.
Yeah. It's not love that changes it. It's always back in the hands of the small percentile, the highest percentile wage earners, which is the richest people on earth. And you said it right on the button. It's the military industrial complex is the largest producer of greenhouse gases and damage of our environment across Mamaki. How do we get past it? It's not necessarily, yes, it's thinking at a global level, but it's bringing it back home again. It's bringing it into a localized industry and economy. And that's where we talk about those biomaterials. United States, we call it breadbasket for a reason, a breadbasket. Why are we not growing our biomaterials left and right from there? Keeping that within 100-mile radius of itself. And then starting up worker cooperatives to produce those biomaterials into some goods and components. For instance, we've been running in the thought of creating a paper mill here in Bemidji out of hemp. You generally want to keep your source within 100 miles of your shop. And so it's figuring out how we can do that as clean as possible, but transitioning off of the damaging that we're doing right now. Paper mill is different. People think it's, hey, it's paper, but they fail to realize that huge harvesting of our forests is something that's detrimental not just to indigenous nations who rely on the forest for our medicines, food, and gathering, but it's also damaging to the environment. So said those climate scientists that we talked about earlier in the show that Joe does not have the numbers for. But bringing over that knowledge of the paper mill, it's those components that can be made out of other different things. For instance, you talked about our cars being those minerals for the batteries are coming from the Congo. Earlier I said we have batteries that can be made out of hemp. Why are we not doing that right now? That should be sourced locally. Why are we not making AAAs, AA's, D cell batteries within every city or within 100 miles of every major city out of hemp? Rechargeable batteries. We're not doing that because, again, you hit the nail on the head. It's the corporate establishment that wants this huge global network. So cannot just extract the wealth from the United States, because this is the death rattle. They're taking as much as they can before we hit revolution. But it's also taking as much money from the global south, which and wealth and resources, which we talk about, with the Congo. And then it's also UK, the European countries. When you colonize another nation, you fail to realize that those tactics that you're putting onto that colony reflect back onto your original and your people themselves. That's why we see the echoes of the global capitalist establishment here in the United States echoing over into UK. We see that they are battling the same type of corporate oligarchy. In fact, a lot of the same people in that corporate oligarchy. Larry Flink from BlackRock is purchasing up wealth and businesses left and right, not just in the United States, but Paris, France has done a godsend when they ran into the BlackRock headquarters just a few months ago. And then, it's similar to that across Mama Key itself. And so to move past this whole system, we need to break it up. But that technology can be shared globally. And China does that at feats. We talk about country development and how we develop countries as a colony. Look at Venezuela, how we butchered them. Look at many different Southern American countries that we have done nation building efforts in. The United States nation building efforts result in cartels. They result in organized crime, desperation, and countries that are destabilized, which results in all of the immigration. And we're now, because people want a better life and they think we have it here. We really, honestly, truly, not by much. But the way that China does nation building, look at their negotiations exactly with Venezuela on how they were going for 1-to-1 for the oil crude in Venezuela for the technology to get them off of extractive materials, solar panels, and so forth. So it's like, yes, we're going to utilize your minerals to keep our system going. We're going to teach you and give you the resources so you don't have to utilize those minerals. And so you can have something in the future. So your people can have something in the future, because these are not infinite. They will run out.
Yeah. Well, it's really more of a symbiotic relationship instead of a parasitic one, right? The West tends to have a parasitic relationship, especially in not only indigenous nations, but African nations as well, versus ones like China. And, for all intents and purposes, Russia a little bit too, they tend to have more of a symbiotic relationship, meaning, it's like, I will give this to you if you give this to me, and then it's mutually beneficial. And a lot of, like, for instance, what countries like China are doing is they're giving more climate friendly solutions for these African countries. They're saying, you know what, we're going to build railroads so that it transports your people even better than just supplying you all with cars. And don't get me wrong, like, I think a lot of the cars that are coming out of China are pretty cool, but at the same time, like, I think, like, the most beneficial thing, for countries like ours, is to have things like the high-speed rail, or have, like, the video I was just showing about hempcrete, which is basically hemp, being made into building blocks for homes and buildings, and how it's fire resistant, right? And so this is something that I think that is, it's not, the crazy part is it's not even revolutionary in a sense where it's something so brand new. Like, this technology is old, but it's useful and it actually works. Hold up, I'm going on a rant real quick. And this is why the West is really some of the most uncivilized
Mm,
swine I've ever seen in my life. We will talk about, oh my God, the African nations and indigenous nations and Eastern nations, they're so uncivilized. But then once scientists actually do the study, like for instance, oh my God, in Africa, they make their huts out of mud. Now we're going, you know what? That mud is actually environmentally sustainable. Who'd have thunk it? And then next thing you know, they're like, yeah, because that's what we have been using, natural stuff instead of all this artificial stuff. And so guess what? Our areas are more environmentally sustainable, even though it looks primitive to you, it actually works. And it actually doesn't harm our environment, you know. And then on top of it, and of course, you know this being indigenous, but a lot of people don't realize that when the European colonizers came, a lot of the areas where they thought it was just wild jungle was actually brilliantly done by the people who cultivated the land that knew the indigenous species of different plants, and then they planted in a way where it made sense. So then not only would it benefit the biodiversity within the area, but it also benefited us humans as well as all the animals and the creepy little things. So therefore they thought, oh, well, it has to be, this way, these lines and the grasslands and these fields. And it's like, no, that's not how the world operates. There's no straight lines in nature. What are you talking about? And so then you look at how they just tore all this down, and now look at it. It's nowhere near as biodiverse as it should be. And so then that's when we start having crises when it happens where a lot of animals and plants start going extinct because we end up not being stewards of the land. And I'm going to
mm.
give indigenous people some flowers right now because this is one of the most beautiful lessons that I have learned. And I'm blanking on their names, but it was two people from the indigenous tribes, well, nations out in California, I think it was, that I had met. And one of the things that he said to me was, and also shout out to Delilah Barrios as well. Shout out to you in Texas. The phrase is, we don't own the land owns us. Baby, when I heard
Mm,
that, it's like, oh,
mm,
snap. That is so brilliant. And it's true.
mm.
We really aren't supposed to be owning it. It's supposed to be the land that owns us because when we're born from the land. When we die, where do we go back to?
Oh, James, that goes into a lot of the work that we were doing in Minnesota with the wild rice. It's part of
Yeah.
the GARN work, which in short, that's Global Alliance for Rights of Nature. Um, and a lot of that work, Tom Goldtooth, Dallas Goldtooth's dad, he's also the executive director of the Indigenous Environmental Network. He said at our, it was March event, he said that Western nations, especially here in the United States, they have the mindset and their laws, their legal framework built around property. So when we think about why our laws are put into place, it's because of the physical actual property, not the relationship with that property and nature's law, which is it's fucking common sense. Part of my language again. Nature's law is common, and nature or the law of nature is actually a legal framework, also just like the property framework that we use here. And simple, one of the laws of nature is the golden rule: do unto others as you want to be done to yourself. And like it's common effing sense. So inherent rights is the protection we were trying to push in Minnesota to protect our wild rice. And that word inherent, it's funny, and we went over it within the Alliance, and we went over it with legal scholars. Michael Lane out of the Indigenous Environmental Network, which is the pillars of this work. He explained it as if it's not the relationship that thing or being is to you, it is the relationship that thing or being has to everything around it. And that's the law of nature. What is the inherent rights that this tree outside has? So it shouldn't be put down. It shouldn't be pillaged. It shouldn't be destroyed, clear cut. What relationship does it have to make sure that our environment stays sustainable and keeps on going? And that's the conversation that it's hard to have within Western nations, is because a lot of our nations, the global South, the indigenous nations, we think of things differently. We think that relationship on how is this item, this being, this thing, and that relationship to keep a steady environment going. You brought up that you give it out to indigenous people because when the colonizers came over, they came into our gardens. They thought it was an unmasked jungle, but it was our gardens that was carefully managed and curated, not just that year, but decades and centuries. Those plants, some of those plants won't bud for 2 to 3 years. So they knew inherently how to grow and how to manage it, where to go back to, how to find it. Those buffalo, the Tatanka over here, we didn't follow them, they followed us. We domesticated that technology that us indigenous people integrated into our environments. And that's where we need to think about these solutions now, is how do we integrate current day technology into our environments where it causes our environments to be sustainable, but also complements our environments and it uplifts our communities at the same time. Brought up these data centers that, across the nation we're fighting. And I brought up how, it all could be replaced with biomaterials that bring very little to, moot amount of carbon offset, but we're stuck in this idea of property and this legal mindset that you don't have a integral relationship between a plant, a river, yourself, your community. It's only between you and that piece of paper that says you bought this house. And that doesn't make sense to me. Because to me, I'm community built. To raise a child, it takes more than just a parent. It takes a community. To raise a community, it takes your environment. And you can't separate that relationship. And what they do here is separate that. And that's why it's so hard to fight, because they want to think about, what are you taking from me? Property. Rather than, why is it being taken and how integral these relationships are, and why it needs to be removed, or why it needs to be brought in, or why it needs to be protected. You're on mute.
This just makes me think, what you just said. We don't live on the earth, we are the earth.
Yeah.
It's like, because when people talk about, we live on the earth, it's almost as if we're temporary occupants, when in reality, if you look at every single element that we're made of, it exists on this planet. It has always existed on this planet. So therefore, we are the organisms. And it really makes sense when you say Mother Earth, right? It makes sense, because it's like, okay, we are from this sphere, right? And that's the beautiful part. But the fact is that we're separating ourselves from not only the earth that which we are a part of, but we're also separating ourselves from each other, which is really anti-human, anti-earthling, really. And so, these climate false solutions are making us think that we're doing right by our planet when in reality, it's really just rusing us into doing right by the corporations and keeping us separate so that we can maintain some type of convenience. When in reality, it's like, okay, our connection to the earth is what actually kept us healthy. Our connection to the
Mm.
earth is what kept us mentally being able to connect with other human beings, so that when it comes to mental health and emotional health, then, we're actually better off. And so ultimately, relying on a system that separates us from it and, thrives on profit it really is almost like an alien, from a distant planet that has infiltrated the planet. And so now we have to take this cancer, this virus, this parasite, and eject it from ourselves, because it is constantly bombarding us with ways to make this planet sicker. And it's happening to us, like even to the point where there start to be holes in our ozone layer. We started seeing more climate change. Like they're talking about right now here in Florida that we're going to have, it's going to be up to a 25% um, uptick in our the activity in the tropics, which means we're going to have stronger, more fierce hurricanes that's going to be coming through the state of Florida. And Florida is a very unique place because we are one of the only peninsulas on this, on Turtle Island. And the fact is that we place ourselves in immediate danger. And whatever happens climate wise, Florida is going to be one of the first places that feels all the damage. And we've seen it in places like Miami, right? Where they're either at or slightly below sea level. You know, this is why depending on real climate solutions is really what will save us. But that this also means gleaning the knowledge from indigenous groups. And by indigenous, I'm not just talking about indigenous on this land, I'm talking about in Africa too, right? Gleaning from the people who have been, living off the land for centuries and centuries, and gaining their knowledge and then using that knowledge in order to build ourselves up collectively as a society. Because that's the only way we're actually going to save ourselves. And not just by just planting random trees in different spots. It's like, no, because those trees may not be native to that area, or it may not connect well with the other different parts of biodiversity that is absolutely needed. This is a balance. And it's like, okay, so those don't go there, because if you put those there, then it's going to mess up this whole entire cycle. I'm getting it now.
We have we have a gardening tactic, or well, a story called the Three Sisters, and I don't know exactly how the story goes, but the story revolves around three different plants: beans, corn, and oh my god, my sister's gonna kick me in the ass for forgetting this one. Beans, corn, and squash. I think it was. I think it's squash, and they all have a symbiotic relationship grown in the same patch. Corn keeps the squash covered. The beans, I believe, just track rodents and mice, and they all work together. They're
Mhm.
cohesive, And for a real solution to come out, it has to be something that complements, builds up, and is sustainable. Like the Three Sisters, they help each other out. They have that relationship, and
Mhm.
our solutions need to have that relationship to actually be something that is going to be beneficial and sustainable for us all. And right now, the solutions that have been pandered to us, they are rooted in property and imperial, or West imperialism. There's no easier way to say that. Is we have been colonized, and you're right, it feels like an alien, because that mindset to people like us, people, indigenous people, and people that are in touch with their stones and the roots and know where they come from, where they can touch the land. We know that this system is wrong. I am an Anishinaabe, and in our beliefs, we are of the land. Instead of going to a heaven or hell, I'm in my woods with my relatives, my family members, the great hunting, um, and I know that for our generations to come, if we're going to thank you, thank you. We also use that over here, the Three Sisters. Check it up. But if we want a healthy and safe future, if we want to achieve the 7 generations and look forward to the next 7 generations, we need to start acting now. I hope that everyone learned a heck of a lot from our conversation here today, JB. I know we were all over the place, but we were covering, the central themes of these false solutions, where they come from, how they interact with our communities, how your community organizers and leaders are working within that system to, better your community, better your family, advocate and build up your voices, but understanding that, that corporate establishment is there and is always going to be there until we root it out. And they will infiltrate, they have infiltrated, they hold the narratives, and you have to look for, the truth. You have to look for the honest solutions that are going to build up your communities. Don't focus yourselves on demagogues within the climate movement or within our politics. Focus on your communities, bring it back home. Your communities will teach you how to do the right stuff. Have that voice. Be democratic about your decision making. And the biggest thing in my job is not teaching people on my cultures or teaching people about my beads and my pearls, but helping people find theirs. And James, I don't have to help you find yours. You are so rooted within Africa and your culture and your beliefs that I feel it over here, but it's our white allies that who have for 500 to 1,000 years have been so ingrained within the colonization efforts of the world that are stuck and thought that they originally were tribal people. They were tribal people. They had democratic decisions in the communities. They didn't rely on a king or a president. They relied on their communities for the resources and for the answers. Let's bring that back and remind everyone where you come from. Teamy, good for having me on. I know we went over our 45 minutes by a good 15 minutes, and it was a good one. I would love to come back soon. James, sorry to close this up. I actually really have to get to my next coalition meeting. And anything else? I can give another 10 minutes if there's any questions that you have of me, or if anyone in the chat has any questions before I dip out.
Yeah, just one question from somebody, and then we'll head on out. Let me see. I just have one question from. Let me see. I wanted to get to this one. Okay. Jacqueline asks, are you working with other environmental organizations in other parts of the world?
Gina and I just attended the tribunal for the right of nature work in Toronto, which GARN itself, I talked about it previously, which is the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature. That's global. We had conversations with folks from Central and South America. There was a group that testified from South America. There work with our fiscal sponsor earlier in our conversation, describe what fiscal sponsor is, but our fiscal sponsor is the Indigenous Environmental Network, and they work at a global level. And they do a lot of work with the UN. And I personally, we watch the ICJ, the International Court. You know, a lot of people don't realize and understand that my life is on the line if I go out of the country and to go testify for UN stuff. Not just mine, hundreds a year, maybe even more than that. You can Google it yourself, but hundreds to thousands of environmental indigenous people or environmental activists that have gone to the UN to testify in front of these courts. They go home and they get murdered. They get assassinated by either the corporations that are in their area or trying to push their stuff. And there's no recourse. There's no protection from their governments. So, you know, I've lost faith in the international courts. I've lost faith within the global system. And that's why, you know, let's bring this back home. Let's bring this to a local level.
Mm-hmm. And then just two more questions popped up. This one's from Gina Peltier. Says, what can we do from home to support the movement?
Well, donate. Like I said, we're grassroots funded. I am broke. Would like a paycheck. Outside of that, because a lot of us are also broke and would like a paycheck as well. I love me some desk warriors. I love people who are sharing and liking our content. I mean, JB, you can say the very much same, but it's more than that. So we did a lot of calls to action over the last couple months to easily go to a website that put in your address, put in your name, put in your phone number, and it already has a pre-written message that you can edit to fit yourself. But just hit send, and it sends an automatic email to your representative, your legislators, hell, your governor. And what does that take? More than 2 or 3 months out of your day just to tell your elected official what's up, knock it the fuck off. Pardon my language again. That's one of the most powerful tools I would have to say that you can do from home is harass your elected officials. I ain't no friends with them. Call them all the nasty names and tell them how to do the effing job. Another thing that you can do from home, mutual aid. Go through your house, go dig through your old clothing, find a local network where you can go drop this stuff off. We have tons of homeless folks that need clothing, that need and college students who need furniture. If you have stuff that you don't need, don't have no longer use for, you know, there are needs that need to be met in your own local community that will build up your local community and make it stronger. Don't rely solely on national organizing or even your nonprofits in your local area to do the work. Go look at where that money is going to, look at who those resources are going to. As a grant writer, as a nonprofit executive director, I will guarantee you some of the places are not the best, and they will use the stuff that you're donating to turn it over for a profit so they can turn that into something else. Is that the best way of doing it? I don't think so. But there are many different ways. But yeah, Desk Warriors, donate your time and fill out those call to action emails. A good one is to call and text your elected officials. And I don't know. I think that covers a lot of. There should be an AIM chapter in every state. If you're Native American, type to the AIM chapter, check them out. If you're from our Black communities, there should be Black Panthers chapters all across the United States that are easy to link into. If you're part of the Chicano communities, please link into your Brown Berets. These are actual grassroots organizing without the nonprofits without the funding, without the grants. How they do it, I'm not getting into that business. Don't ask me. But tie into them, start organizing with them, link in locally.
All right. Thank you so very much for joining. Joey, it's always a pleasure to have you. And you're such a wealth of knowledge, as well as, your compassion shines through. So I'm going to make sure to have you back on. And it's less time than 6 months, but thank you so very much. Shout out to Gina and Tyler as well. Please give my love to your family and your loved ones. And also a special hello to your Uncle Leonard as well. Thank you so very much for joining me.
Chimigwej, Kegawagamin, Minawa.
All right. Take care. Have a great day. All right, folks. Man, that was a great conversation. It's always really good to have Joey on. I always tend to learn a lot. So if you guys have not, please make sure to go ahead and visit the site for Makwa. It's makwamikana.org. So I put that in the link. Sorry, I put that in the chat really quick. If you guys would like to, you guys can go there. And I'll put it in the chat once more so you guys can go there as well. Great resource, especially. And then also the other website was climatefallsolutions.org. That's also great to learn about the false solutions. And you can if you don't have the hard copy, you can always read the PDF, but you guys have that there as well. So thank you so very much to everybody from the Makwa organization for joining and educating us. So thank you so very much for that. Let's get into, first of all, let's go ahead and give a stream to like. Thank you so very much to everybody for joining in on this beautiful conversation. We're going to be heading into the rest of the show. Yes, and Joey was very generous of his time. Thank you so very much. And I cannot wait to have more conversations, especially in regards to getting our planet back into balance. I think that's really important. And once we get our planet back into balance, it's easier to get ourselves back into balance, right? All right. So before we do that, we're going to have a shout out to patrons on Patreon. And then once we do our shout outs to the patrons on Patreon, then we will get into the chat. Now, here's what we're going to do. Let's get into this. All right. Shout out to all the patrons on Patreon. Here are the tiers. As always, we have Mega Jaybefaunters, Super Duper Jaybefaunters, Super Jaybefaunters, Jaybefaunters. We have Comrades, Solidarity, and JB members. And thank you and shout out to new members, Champa Breeze. Thank you so very much for becoming a new member. So thank you very much for all of that. Also, just like to let you guys know, my channel is demonetized. So if you'd like to support the channel, you can support via Patreon or PayPal. So I do have one announcement to make before we get into the chat. I just want to let you guys know something personally that's going on in my life. And this is hard for me to talk about, but it is absolutely necessary. So as of right now, I don't know what in the world the Trump administration is doing. But as somebody that's on a fixed income and somebody that is struggling already, they cut my disability benefits in half. Not just my disability benefits, but my mom's Social Security retirement check got cut in half. And so, of course, because of who we bank with, which I'm trying to change, I'm trying to get into a credit union. It's a slow process for me. But we typically get our benefits a couple days early. But most people who get Social Security disability, supplemental security income, or Social Security retirement or survivor's benefits, they get their checks today. And so I fear that a lot of people are going to have their checks cut It is June 3rd. Today is the day that typically a lot of people who receive benefits from Social Security get their checks or deposits today. And unfortunately, I'm one of the people who is a victim of what this government is doing. Did I receive any type of letters warning me about this? No, I have not. Unfortunately, my mother has. And the exact explanation as to why, I'm still trying to figure out. My mother still has Medicare, and my mother's 73. She's about to be 74 this year. And I'm wondering, like, are they cutting her Medicare? Are they cutting her out of Medicare? Or are they just like retroactively charging her for her Part B premiums? I don't know. Because the way the letter was written, it didn't seem like, it seemed like they were cutting her, like getting rid of her Medicare. But it's like, okay, you still have Part A, but we're taking away Part B. It's weird. But that's what's going on with people like myself. And this is horrible timing because I'm now 7 weeks post-transplant surgery. And in order to be able to get myself back and forth from Tampa, and in order to be able to, keep up with my health so that I can maintain this kidney, this gift that I've received, they're making it that much harder. And so I was debating bringing this up, but if anybody in your life is on Social Security retirement, Social Security disability, supplemental security income, or survivor benefits, check on them right now. Check on them, see how they're doing. Because they may be facing the exact same situation. And if this has happened to me and my mother, I'm telling you right now, guaranteed it's happening to many other Americans in this country. Which means shit is hitting the fan. And so for me, it's like, what do I do? So I do have a spot fund crowdfunding that I have. I'll put it in the chat one time. If you guys feel like you guys want to contribute, then fine. If you guys would like to share, you guys can share. But I'm just letting you guys know what's going on in my life because, to be honest with you, I don't know why. I don't know how I'm going to be able to. Hopefully, I'll be able to make it this month, depending on different things. But yeah, it's rough. The system, part of the system is the cruelty to make examples out of certain people. And it's like they'll make examples out of the poorest and most disenfranchised, but they won't make examples out of the billionaires. They won't make examples out of the corporate dictators because they're the ones who are running the system. So yes, that's what's going on with me. And any help, is appreciated, but so many of us are going through it, and I don't blame you if you can't. But yeah, that's what's going on right now. Or if you guys would like to, if you guys don't feel like going that route, you guys can always become a patron on Patreon. That's another way of assisting, that helps too. But yeah, it's, or I do have a merch store. If you guys want to get something for it, I do have a merch store. It's always linked in the description below. So you guys have that too. But 7 weeks post-transplant, and I'm dealing with this. I just hope I still have my Medicare. If not, I'm royally screwed. I'm just waiting for the letter. Anywho, thank you very much for listening through that. Let's get to the comments in the chat, and then we shall move on. So we're going to say hello to CBC Voter, saying happy Tuesday at JB. Good to see you, CBC Voter. Jacqueline says, hello, Jaybefaunt and Joey. Hey, everyone. Joey says, Bo's ho, folks. Thank you so very much. Good to see you. Jace Hart says, hey, JB. Hey, Jace. Good to see you. CEB Applejack says, salute, gang. Salute, CEB Applejack. So good to have you. Jacqueline says, Roger said that the interview with Joey, I think it was one about the hemp, was the best interview. Roger raves about that interview. I think it was really good. I think it was really educational. But that's the thing. Roger is he's like a professional student. So he's always learning. So anything that's educational is like up here for Roger. I don't have the brain power that he has. I don't have the brain capacity that he has. Roger's way smarter than me, so he absorbs information like a sponge. I gotta do better. I gotta do way better. Jacqueline says, talk about ending oppression. Apparently, there's the CEO, can't remember his name, who thinks that the U.S. should have a monarchy and that some CEO, probably him, should be the king. Shaking my damn head. Yeah, that's not going to happen. The divine right of kings went away long ago, and we are not going to allow that to happen. We will stand 10 toes down on that one. Thank you so very much, Jacqueline, for that. And Jacqueline says, JB and Joey are the president and treasurer of the I Hate Elon, not the fan club. Jacqueline, get out of my head. Kate Mack says, hey, everybody, happy Pride Month to you, my love. Oh, thank you so very much, Kate Mack. You are lovely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Traveler's Wolf says, Care Bear, good to see you do the Care Bear stare. Stare deep into your soul. All right. Thank you so very much. Gina Peltier. I think this is Joey's sister, says the critical resources that need to be protected are water, land, air, and our natural foods and medicines. By the way, when we talk about environment and climate, that also includes the food, the food you eat and the water you drink. And don't we want it to be as healthy as possible? As a foodie, I don't want it to be as healthy as possible, right? So yeah. Also, Gina says, bring the buffalo back. Yep. I think it was like somewhere around north of 9 million buffalo that were just massacred by the European settlers, the colonizers. That really messed up the biodiversity on this land. It's crazy. Millions of buffalo just massacred. Let me see. Tyler Obrigado Peltier says, whoop, whoop, to Joey in the house. Gina says, hemp can save the world. Absolutely. All right. Jacqueline says, all right. Oh, all right. What did that? Jacqueline asks, is there an intersection between climate and environment, though? Yes. Climate influences environment, and environment influences climate. Like, for instance, if you really want to do carbon capture, then we just, grow the green biodiversity of plants, especially trees, within a given area, right? And if we do that, that absorbs a lot of the carbon that's in the air. Also, one of the huge consumers of carbon dioxide is the phytoplankton that we have in our oceans as well, that produce lots of oxygen for us to breathe, but it also absorbs a lot of carbon dioxide. So, I mean, there's many ways that we can do that, but that also means taking care of our waters, especially our oceans. That would be very important. So, yeah. Mouse says hemp walls are awesome. Yes, they are. They are. They are fire resistant as well. Thomas, Oklahoma says batteries can be made from hemp. I don't know that. Let's see, I don't know that, but neocons in the empire would rather loot Africa instead. Yep, absolutely. They rather loot Africa instead. Thomas also says the earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth, the most indigenous cultures around the globe. Yeah, and that's the beauty of it, you know, is we're all a part of it. Every single person you've ever loved, every single person you ever disliked and hated, every single moments that you have lived and you have enjoyed, life, every single time you've had those moments of depression and anxiety, every single hope and dream and aspiration and fear that you've had have existed on this rock. It reminds me of the poem of, not, it's not really a poem, but it's a quote from the Pale Blue Dot from, oh my goodness, I'm blanking on his, Carl Sagan. The Pale Blue Dot, by Carl Sagan, is something I think that everybody should read or listen to, because it really puts in perspective how precious this planet is. There's no other planet, at least in our solar system, that has a diversity like us. That's why it's so special. Cobra Commander says, cooperation. This is the law of nature. Why the white man made up the lie of lone wolves, turns out it's a myth. If a wolf betrays the pack, they're cast out. Cooperation is law. Those who break. And so, let me see. Alert. 2 drone are above the Freedom Flotilla. Uh-oh. And I will get to your DM, Roger, in a second. And yes, Jacqueline, educational stuff is like catnip to Roger. Roger's a walking, talking PBS. Jeanette Eastman says, JB, are you familiar with John Trudell? No, I am not. He said, Joey must be. Check out interviews of him, talks, and musical performances and CDs. Interesting. Thank you very much for that. Joey says, listen to his music regularly and organize with some of his family and friends. Hey, there you go. I love when things come together. Let me see. Joey says, conservatism are folks that want to preserve the land for capitalist purpose. Yeah. Or, I'm sorry, conservationism. Yeah. My thing is, like, we need to preserve the land for collective, for the collective good, not just for ourselves, but also our other sentient beings that are on this planet. Edward says, there are those who say that green energy will destroy jobs because of the U.S. reliance on fossil fuels, but people don't realize that it will be a transition to green energy and retraining. Basically, what you're talking about is just transition. That's what Joey was talking about. Just transition is actually something that must be done, because the thing is, like, people have to be able to eat. They have to be able to have a roof over their heads. They have to be able to, not only survive, but thrive. And so I think that it can be done. I think the solutions are out there. I think the solutions are actually a lot easier than what people think they are. We just have to do it. But the thing is that we have to get rid of the system that's holding us back. And yeah, so thank you so very much for that. So let's get into the next subject. So which one was I going to do next? Yes, we're going to go into, oh gosh, I got to talk about this guy. Oh Lord, I don't feel like talking about this Android. Hmm. All right, let's get into it. So we talked to the one and only Joy Peltier, and he gave his warning about greenwashing, how they fool us, and about climate falsehoods. So that was wonderful. But now we're going to be getting into Meta and Defit. Oh, you know what? I forgot to get to Roger's DM. We'll get to that in a second. Sorry, I forgot. Uh, okay. Sorry about that, Roger. Yeah. Okay. Let's enlarge this. Roger says, now you see that people gave a brother a kidney and he stops responding to your DMs. Do be like, man, get your bum ass out of here with your ballot initiatives and vote banks. I don't need your broke ass no more, Negro. I'm part of the 1% now, baby. Jokes, you know I got them. I know, Roger, I know. He says, anyway, let's connect with Nelson and Jim Perlman and Pedro. We need to introduce them to public banking and what it can do for Floridians. Also connect them with Seth Donnelly from Taxpayers Against Genocide. Yep, got to do that. He says, yes, thorium-based nuclear power reactors owned and controlled by workers in the local community. But for me, that is transitory. The ultimate goal is to make graphene-based batteries made from hemp, or even better, borophene by worker cooperatives that can hold a charge for a minimum of a year without power coming from the outside. Then install them in every building, construction, and home. Place a solar panel on top of that roof that will charge the battery. What this would do was make the landscape look better because all those wires and telephone poles will be gone except maybe having internet network data cables. And since every constructed building home would be on its own generator, then blackouts would no longer exist. That's the ultimate goal. Ooh, wait, Roger. Hold up. Wait a minute. You know the song "The Wheels on the Bus Go Round and Round." Look, the wheel in your brain goes round and round. You just be thinking. I gotta see if we can do a brain transplant because I need something like that in my head. Thank you very much for that. All right, let's continue. He says it takes 66% voter ratification in Florida to do something about taxes. Until then, it's going to be hard to do a statewide public banking, single payer healthcare, and a whole host of other things. I would like next time you speak with Peter and Jen to introduce my tax initiative plan for Florida to get those things popping. Watch the Sitting Bull documentary drama movie on the History Channel. Yes, I know it's the History Channel, so there's a lot of stuff going on there, but check it out anyway. He says a smaller acre of hemp can remove more pollution and carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, producing clean oxygen into the air at a much more efficient rate than a whole bunch of trees. Which I look, here's the thing. I think we should do both. Like, do like the crops of hemp, right? But also we should plant more trees. I would like to see that. Especially some fruit. Can we get some more fruit trees around here? Because a person be hungry when he walks around, when I'm gallivanting throughout the city, right? I want to be able to stop and pick an orange, off a tree or a papaya, crack that thing open and, you know what I'm saying? Did I just do that orange drink? Lord. Look. I know this is a family show. It wasn't supposed to sound like that, but it did. So I'm sorry. I'm talking about like eating oranges and papaya and pineapples, even though they don't grow on trees. Some pineapple plants, they'll be nice to have around. Anyways, I'm hungry, y'all. I'm hungry. Okay, but yes, get some fruit trees around here. And good Lord, can we have more bees, please? Gosh, just more bees. Not the wasps and hornets though. No, they can stay over there. But the bees are the homies, especially the honeybees. I gotta love the honeybees. Anyways, there you go. Why in the hell y'all watch this show? This damn show, I'm telling you. Y'all are. I don't know why y'all watch me, but thank you. Thank you. Joey says more fruit or female trees means less allergies. Bingo! Which means you have to take less Claritin, which means you have to take less Benadryl. You don't have as many allergies. You don't have to worry about too much pollen in the air because that pollen is being absorbed by the female trees and then they're bearing fruit. This is why we have so much pollen now, because these cities are taking the trees and only planting male trees, which means that we're getting all this pollen in the air, which means everybody's is getting stuffed up. They're getting itchy and watery eyes. And then Big Pharma makes money off of the allergy medication that you need in order to be able to at least function. It's all connected, baby. It's all connected. Anywho, but yes, more fruit trees, right? That would be lovely. Imagine just walking past a banana tree and you just, beautiful. Anyway, let's get to the next subject. Take that down. Come on, JB. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Thomas says blueberry plants all over the city, a natural plant to North America that grows back without care. Oh, look, and then if we have too many blueberries, then we can make a whole bunch of blueberry cobbler. You hear that, Roger? Blueberry cobbler, peach cobbler, apple crisp. Start planting sweet potatoes, have a whole bunch of sweet potato pie. And then we won't need it, and then we can just, plant sugarcane, have sugarcane growing. And if we don't want to use sugarcane, we just have bees everywhere. We start having a whole bunch of honey for the blueberry cobbler. I'm hungry, y'all. I'm hungry. Anyway, let's get into this. All right, so we already talked with Joey Peltier. Now we're going to be talking about Meta in defense. This is going to be, I have to talk about another billionaire. I cannot stand these people, but look, we got to do this because this is very important. So we're getting into this, talk about Meta in the Department of Defense. Y'all, look, here's the thing. I don't like billionaires. Look, if every single hater of billionaires ceased to exist, I would come back as a ghost to hate on billionaires some more. Look, I would be Casper the unfriendly ghost. I'd be going ooh in a black sheep. But here's the thing. When I saw this story, I said to myself, this is weird. This is wild. This is crazy. You can't be serious right now. But this is actually happening. And so I decided to take a look at this because this is pretty scary. So let me share this with you guys. This is an article I found, and it's being corroborated. It says Meta, Facebook Meta is now a defense contractor. The blurb says, giving people the power to build community and bring the world closer together so we can them. I got to be careful what I say on here. But let's get into this. It says Meta has partnered with Anduril Industries to build augmented and virtual reality devices for the military 8 years after it fired the defense firm's founder, Palmer Luckey. Oh my God, you cannot write a more funnier name. Palmer Luckey. Wait, did I say that correctly? Yeah, Palmer Luckey. I don't know. I don't know who named them, but anyway, let's continue. Palmer Luckey says Luckey joined Meta when it was still called Facebook following the social media company's 2014 acquisition of Oculus, the virtual reality headset biz he founded. He left the then Facebook branded corporation in 2017 with some reports stating his $10,000 political donation to an anti-Hillary Clinton group in the run-up to the 2016 presidential election had been a factor. Others allege he faced pressures to publicly endorse Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson instead of his preferred candidate, Donald Trump. A Facebook spokesperson denied that Palmer's departure was political back in 2018, when the Wall Street Journal made that claim. Whatever the case, Meta's donation of $1 million to the Trump inaugural fund in December of 2024 was by definition political. The goal of the Meta Anduril tie-up is to make some money selling XR extended reality products, something that has eluded Meta since it adopted the name to signal its focus on monetizing the metaverse and, by some accounts, to distance itself from the brand damage that tarnished Facebook in the wake of various privacy and moderation scandals. XR is a blanket term that encompasses virtual reality, VR, where computer-generated images are projected into the user's field of vision, blocking out the real world, and augmented reality, AR, where the images are superimposed over the real world. Meta's Reality Labs lost $4.2 billion in Q1 of 2025 and has flushed away similar sums between $1.83 billion and $4.97 billion every quarter since Q4 of 2020, when Reality Labs was formed. According to the Financial Times, Meta has invested $80 billion in various flavors of reality, virtual, augmented, mixed, and extended since its 2014 Oculus acquisition, and is expected to spend another $20 billion by the end of 2025. Perhaps the U.S. military, with a proposed budget that tops $1 trillion this year, will help generate some return on that investment. Here's the deal. So basically what Meta's doing is they're saying, we need more money. We want more money. So they're going to do the Elon thing. They're going to go, okay, let's become a military contractor because that's where the money's at. And when you have a military contractor, then guess what? What do you need in order to keep the money rolling in? Well, you need military actions, aka military conflict, aka war. You need war in order to keep the military contracts coming. You need these conflicts. You need death, destruction, carnage to continue. You need to have threats constantly, consistently, so that you can make excuses in order to be able to say, oh, well, we just need to produce more to protect ourselves. And so then what happens? Well, they make more money, and the rest of us, well, we're less safe because of these companies. They're like hammers. When everything looks like a nail, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So it's getting kind of dicey here, especially with what Meta is doing. But let's continue. All right. Says Meta has spent the last decade building AI and AR to enable the computing platform of the future, said Mark Zuckerberg, founder and CEO of Meta, in a statement. We're proud to partner with Anduril to help bring these technologies to the American service members that protect our interests at home and abroad. Says businesses of head-mounted tech appliances. Businesses and head-mounted tech appliances have proven to be a tough one. In 2014, Google gambled that Google Glass. Oh, remember Google Glass? Gosh, memories. Google Glass would appeal to people with a cyborg chic and managed to spawn the term glasshole. 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 Before the consumer and enterprise versions were canceled in 2015 and 2023, respectively. Then it says Microsoft's HoloLens enjoyed a slightly longer market arc starting in 2015 until it was discontinued in late 2024. And in February 2025, Redmond handed its U.S. Army's Integrated Visual Augmentation System, IVAS, contractor over to Anduril. So this is what they're doing. They're taking all this technology and they're putting it into basically wearable tech, right? And so ultimately, they're going to be doing this technology in order to help the U.S. military basically murder people more efficiently. That's basically what it is. It's just to help murder people better or easier or more efficiently. And all this money that Meta's getting, my question is, where is the healthcare? Where is the housing? Where is the education? We still have homelessness. Where's you spend money on companies like Meta? Where's the reparations that's owed to Black American freedmen? It's funny because a lot of times people go, "Oh my God, well, we're not going to spend all this money on you guys. You guys are going to take all this money. We don't owe you anything," even though it is a debt that's owed. But at the same time, they're not blinking an eye when it comes to all these billions of dollars going to these tech giants. What would you rather that money go to? Somebody like an Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg, who's going to keep all that wealth at the top? Or that money actually goes to a people that has been suffering, that the money is actually owed, that has been suffering with it in this country for its 250-year history and beyond that. And so then you pay that back, but that money ends up circulating back in the economy anyway. What would you rather have? Or somebody that's just going to hoard the wealth, a couple people that's just going to hoard all the wealth. What would you rather have? Because you're not going to get a third option. Because it's not actually going to go to the rest of us. And also, it's not going to go to people who it's only going to go to the oligarchs that are making it so that they perpetuate war. And guess what? Who's going to be fighting those wars? It's going to be your kids. Oh, but sure, they got the VR and they got the augmented reality visors on. They got that gear on. And yet they're still losing limbs. They're still having health issues. They're still having PTSD. They're still having mental, emotional issues by the time they come home. And then when it comes time for them to actually be cared for by the U.S. government, the U.S. government just kicks them to the curb anyway. And so then people are, getting mad that the United States government is allowing this, but y'all could have just, instead of money going to the military industrial complex, y'all could have just gave us our reparations. And you wouldn't have to worry about people dying like that. Or that money could actually go towards education or other universal programs. But instead, we're giving it to Mark Zuckerberg. We're giving it to Mr. Android himself. My gosh, this is what the United States is going to be spending its money on. And yes, Mark Zuckerberg was there for the inauguration of Donald Trump. What does that tell you? So ultimately, it's never about actually doing what's best for the people. And you don't think they're not going to use that technology on the Palestinians first? And then guess what? That technology, you know where it's going to go? It's going to get absorbed by our police in this country, and they're going to use it against us in these streets. Mm-hmm. So when we're marching against police brutality, or we're leading a march for healthcare or housing or something like that, guess what? The police is going to have that technology too, and they're going to use it against us because it's going to be field tested in Palestine. And that's what's most troubling. These corporations are using the money that they gain off of our data, and now they're going to turn around and use that same money against us. Sometimes I wish that you could just throw some water on Mark Zuckerberg and he would short circuit. Unfortunately, he's an actual human being. I guess. But isn't that wild? How Meta is actually going to be essentially now a military contractor on top of other companies that are going into military contractors, right? It's crazy. Let me see. Let me show this. Just 1 second here. All right. Let me share this as well. Since some people will be like, I don't recognize that website, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Here's the Washington Post. It says Meta is working on a high-tech helmet for the U.S. military. The social network company is partnering with weapons maker Anduril to adapt its AI and virtual reality technology to assist soldiers. There goes the android himself. So let's go here. It says the partners aim to transform how warfighters see, sense, and integrate battlefield information. The companies are already working on high-tech helmet as part of a project called Eagle Eye. Anduril founder Palmer Luckey told the tech podcast Core Memory. Eagle Eye. Wait, hang on. Hold up. There was a movie called Eagle Eye. Yes, I remember this. It was a conspiracy film. Oh my God. Y'all, hang on. Hold up. Hold up. Hold up. Let me show y'all. There was a movie called Eagle Eye, right? And this movie was basically, it stars Shia LaBeouf, right? Those of you who remember, this came out in 2008. And let me see. So it says Stanford University dropout Jerry Shaw learns that his identical twin brother Ethan is an officer in the U.S. Air Force, has been killed in a car crash. Following the funeral, he is surprised to find a large sum of money in his bank account in his apartment filled with firearms and bomb-making materials. Jerry receives a phone call from a woman who warns that the FBI is about to arrest him and he needs to run. Disbelieving the voice, he is caught by the FBI, interrogated by supervisor agent Tom Morgan, while Morgan confers with the Air Force One OSI Special Agent Zoe Perez. The woman on the phone arranges for Jerry's escape and directs him to Rachel Holloman, the single mother. The woman who on the phone is coercing Rachel by threatening her son Sam, who is aboard the Capital Limited en route to Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., with a school on ban. So, yeah, this is about a system that basically is it's about a system that basically is watching everybody. It's called Eagle Eye. That is basically the truth is stranger than fiction, I'm telling you. And so they call this Eagle Eye. It says Meta's new business initiative also reunites Zuckerberg with Palmer Luckey, the founder and virtual reality company Oculus. So this is wild, y'all. It says Meta's push to serve the military arrives as the company and its founder have attempted to rebrand themselves for President Donald Trump's second term. Since Trump's re-election, Zuckerberg has sought to strengthen his relationship with the president with flattering public comments, private meetings, and a $1 million donation by Meta to the president's inauguration committee. Meta has also made Republican-friendly policy changes, including scrapping its fact-checking program, overhauling its content moderation strategy to be more permissive, and ending diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Let me tell you something about these corporations, right? These corporations, this is the problem with capitalism. They will follow the money before they will ever follow anything ethical or moral. So when everybody's talking about, oh my God, they got rid of DEI, of course they did, honey, because they never actually believed in diversity, equity, and inclusion. It was just to make money off of you. That's what they do. That's what capitalists do. Look, I'm going to tell you right now, if chattel slavery became popular again, who do you think would be behind it and be cheering it on? These big corporations would. Might I remind you who also is cheering on Nazi Germany? What corporations? You have Mercedes-Benz, you have BMW, you had Hugo Boss, you had all these German companies that were down with the Nazi party at the time. And guess what? It was all because it was about the money. That's what it was about. It was never about actually doing what's right. Hell, just look. I want you to go on Twitter right now and just scroll through how many companies and how many like sports teams right now are saying Happy Pride Month with their rainbow flags right now, all because it's socially acceptable and that they can make money off of it by making themselves seem progressive. But the minute it becomes really, really popular to discriminate against LGBTQ people, guess what? They're not going to do a damn thing. And guess what? Guess what? If anti-blackness becomes more popular socially again, because it's already ramping up now, but guess what? If it becomes more rampant, guess what? Anti-blackness is going to be more popular. They're not going to care if people like me and all the other black people in the United States, especially black Americans, if we're discriminated against, they're not going to care because it's popular, because that means they're not going to lose any revenue over it. It's all about the pockets. It's never about the ethics or the morals. They're fair weather. They go anywhere the money goes. You see this with Meta. Everybody thought Mark Zuckerberg was a liberal. And now what is he doing? He's partnering with Trump. So this is the thing. This is why corporations, especially in this capitalist system, they're going to throw you to the wind. They're going to throw you to the wolves if it means they'll make an extra dollar. This is why we have to get away from this system. And now look what they're doing. And you don't think these helmets, these new helmets that they're developing, is not going to be used on disenfranchised people in other countries in order for them to be battle tested? Baby, it's going to, and then chicken's going to come home to roost. It's going to come and it's going to start harming us. Because that's what they do. Because they got to make their money somehow. So yes, that's the issue that's going on right now. This is something that I saw. I was just like, whoa, really? All right. But yeah, Mark Zuckerberg, he's not only down with Trump, but he's down with the fence. Go ahead and give a like to the stream. Thank you so very much for that. Appreciate it very much. Let's get into the comments in the chat, and then we shall move on. All right. Edward says the government has all of our data so it can spy on us to find out if we support the Palestinians fight against genocide. They can check to see what we have posted on social media. This is also true. This is why Donald Trump is also partnering with Peltier in order to be able to create an entire registry of all the citizens, in this country. Which a lot of conservatives who voted for Trump, they're now saying we didn't vote for this. Oh, yes, you did. Yes, you did. And I would say this to the liberals too, if they voted for Harris, because you don't think Harris wouldn't do this? Oh my God, Harris definitely would do this. This is what, look, Harris and Donald Trump are very similar. They just don't want you to know it. And so, yeah, Donald Trump's going to be doing that. Of course, he's a fascist. Of course he's going to do it. A registry? So that we can monitor everything you say? Yeah, this is Minority Report. Corporate Commander says, I just want to point out that this guy didn't make Oculus. He's like Musk. It is his company, but Oculus was built by John Carmack, who also wanted Quake to be metaverse, but that tech didn't exist, I guess, in 1990. Jeanette says animal agriculture is one of the 3 top contributors of climate change. Cut your consumption of animal products, food, beverage, clothing, footwear, bags, furniture, personal products, entertainment, transportation. Thank you very much for that, Janet. Jacqueline says you have to be constantly manufactured at consent just so these disgusting ghouls can get richer and richer. That's also true. Shout out to Cowboy Kitty for joining the chat. Rondo says Zuckerfuck is a whole Bama. Oh, that's an interesting name to call him. Interesting. Let me see. Thomas says oligarchs have trillions of assets to tap into, yet they want all of our tax dollars for themselves. Yep, absolutely. They are leeches. Rondo says, like the Ray-Ban glasses. Yep. Jacqueline said, oh, I caught on. Zuckerberg is the Android. Yes, he's the Android. Cobra Commander says, just sucks. Sorry, I'm a nerd, but there is a timeline out there where Metaverse is Quake Deathmatch and we all have VR glasses and Quake like it's Ready Player One. Let me see. Vera says, peace. Good to see you. Let me see. Waddy says, Palmer Lucky reminds me of either an evil Pixar employee or a failed son of Magnum PI. I can't decide which. I just can't believe the man's name is Palmer Lucky. Oh my goodness. You know how sometimes people will call out somebody by their last name first and then they do their first name. So it's, Lucky Palm. I'm going to hell, aren't I? Oh gosh. Oh Lord. Oh. Anyway, let's get into the last segment. Oh my gosh, what in the hell? JBB, oh, behave. Hang on. Oh, wait. Roger, what the hell you said? Okay. Let me see. All right, so let's go here. It says 1 acre of hemp can produce the same amount of oxygen as approximately 25 acres of forest. This claim is often made, but it's important to note that while hemp is a fast-growing, efficient oxygen producer, it doesn't offer the same biodiversity and ecosystem services as a forest. Go, ooh, wait, Roger. Lord, let me pause. Sorry, mute myself. It says elaboration: hemp's oxygen production. Hemp plants are known for their rapid growth, efficient oxygen producing, capturing CO2 at a higher rate than many other plants. Forests are vital for oxygen production and carbon sequestration, but they also provide crucial habitat and biodiversity. While 1 acre of hemp can produce the same amount of oxygen as 25 acres of forest, it's crucial to remember that forests offer a much wider range of ecological benefits. The claim that hemp can produce the same amount, let me see, is a generalization and may not usually applicable. Factors like the specific hemp variety, growing conditions, and the type of forest in question can influence oxygen production rates. Hemp is a valuable crop with numerous uses, including fiber, oil, and biofuel production. And then it said forests provide crucial ecosystem services as wildlife habitat, water regulation, and soil health, which hemp cannot provide. All right, so thank you very much for that. Roger says, I like picking on my little bro. Yep, I feel picked on. He said nothing but love. My gay brothers and sisters. Also, I really enjoyed your talk on this subject on Be Easy That Dude show. Check him out. Yes, I was on Be Easy That Dude's stream, and it was a great conversation. We talked for almost 3 hours. It was great. let me see, Roger posts this. Hang on.
So today we're going to go down one of the largest rabbit holes I've ever found, and this is the replacement of the government with AI, and that's what's in this bill. Let's talk about it. So in section 43201, it talks about replacing the Department of Commerce with AI. Now the question comes with, what else do they replace with? AI. And here's where it gets really strange. It talks about in this section below that no politician or governing body may stop AI for the next 10 years or enforce any laws or regulations regulating artificial intelligence models. That's Silicon Valley owning the government. Then we find Silicon Valley manipulating the weather. Then it gets weirder when we find AI and Silicon Valley entering the healthcare system to control all of that. And you can't sue any of these companies. Isn't that odd? And this kind of reminds me of the Vaccine Protection Act signed by Reagan in 1986, protecting all the vaccine companies.
Okay, the whole jab thing, I got to be very careful what they talk about that.
Then it gets even deeper when we find Billy Boy Clinton in the Telecommunication Act of 1996. He passed a bill so if they put a cell phone tower in front of your house, you can't sue for any damages. Do you see how the government is kind of setting us up? And then they're going to replace the government with AI? It's kind of really strange. It's almost like Black Mirror. I don't know.
Okay, so thank you very much for that. And then Marjorie Taylor Greene said maybe guys should stop voting for Ish. You haven't read then, just a thought. Yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's a whole ass clown in many ways. Sometimes, once in a while, she'll get something right, but a lot of times she'll get some stuff wrong. Roger says, of course you would think a bunch of fruit trees, James, but I don't think I want to see a whole bunch of gay guys growing from trees in my neighborhood. Give me the money trees, baby. Please don't send your friends to my house, not the government or the Mossad. Worse, dudes showing up in high heels, bras, halter tops, and chaps, putting guns in my face, saying what you say about Kingpin James, motherfucker. Why you gotta paint this so vividly that I can see it in my mind, Roger? He says, sorry, I was joking. He said, them, shut the F up, you heterosexual itch. If you think this ish is sweet, huh? Me, sorry, I didn't mean it. People, I'm telling you, you didn't let this teddy bear Ruben stutter looking Negro you see on your screen for you. Wait. I gotta tell Savvy about this. You called me a teddy bear Ruben stuttered looking Negro. Oh no, that's my sorry for 2004, and I ain't gonna mess up no more. That this dude on your screen is gangsta. Imagine a whole bunch of people dressed like Prince of the Thieves in the Temple video showing up at your door threatening your life because you offended Kingpin James. Damn, give a brother a kidney. He thinks he runs the world all of a sudden. Gonna have me going like have me like dude in New Jack City. Sit your $5 ass down before I make change. Roger, you just Lord. Oh my goodness. Oh, Nibble said bleach blonde, bad built butch body. Oh gosh. Oh my gosh. I love y'all. Y'all just make y'all enrich my life. Oh, oh no. Oh, you guys are brutal. Rondo says Marjorie Taylor Greene, old man face. Day. Rondo. Oh my goodness. Tell me how you really feel. Oh my goodness. Oh. Jesus Christ. You guys are funny. Anyway, let's get into the final segment, shall we? This is going to be a good one. This one was submitted to me by Roger himself. I can't wait to get into this one because this one's going to be a good one. It's going to be good. It's going to be very good. It's a good hombre. Let me see. Wait. Oh, no. I know I got the link here. Oh, yep. Here it is. Make sure. Okay. All right. So let's get into the final segment, shall we? This is going to be a good one. All right. So we talked to Joey Peltier earlier, talking about the warning about these climate solutions, these false solutions when it comes to climate. That was Joey Peltier's warning. Then we talked about Meta in defense. Of course, the Android is trying to create more T1000s, apparently, within our government. And so we have that to look forward to. But now we're going to be talking about home prices drop in Florida. We're going to be talking about ghost towns in Florida, empty ghost towns reaction. We're going to talk about this, baby. This is going to be an interesting one. So let's get into this. You guys know I live in the state of Florida, right? I know. Go ahead. Feel sorry for me. I feel sorry for me. All right. But when Roger Meadows, thank you very much, shout out to you, showed me this video, I was very curious as to why we have these empty ghost towns or these seemingly empty housing developments popping up, and you don't see many people moving in. And so when I came across this, it shifted my thinking a bit. Because within the last few years, we've been going through a population explosion here in Florida, especially Central Florida, especially within the I-4 corridor. So you have Orange, Seminole, Osceola counties, maybe a little bit of Volusia, maybe a little bit of Lake County. But throughout the entirety of Central Florida within the I-4 corridor, we have been going through a population boom because of the area where basically the cost of living is lower than that of the northern states, right? You have states like New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Massachusetts, so on and so forth. A lot of people are moving here. You have some people moving in from the Midwest, like Illinois, right? And so you have these people moving here for a more affordable life. But because they're all moving here, guess what happens? The prices tick up, right? And so because of that uptick in price, then it makes it more expensive for those of us who are local. We're now suffering because, number one, our pay does not go up like that with the cost of inflation. Even though we did pass a $15 an hour minimum wage, it doesn't go into effect fully at $15 an hour until September of 2026. So right now we're about to head into, so right now we're $13 an hour right now. By September, in a couple months, we'll be at $14 an hour, right? And then all through between this September and then next September, then we'll finally hit $15 an hour after that. So even still, according to the National Low Income Housing Coalition, their out of reach program, you have to make at least over $35, really comfortably $36 an hour to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in the state of Florida. And one of the places that is gaining the most when it comes to cost of living is Central Florida, the Orlando area, especially where I live, right? And so because of that, I didn't realize that now there's a bit of a downturn happening in Florida. And so we're going to go into this video really quick. And I'm going to be pausing throughout, to get my reactions to this. But this really is showing that there is a major shift in Florida. So this is from Greenwashing Consulting. Is empty ghost towns are overtaking Florida. The 2008 repeat underway. So let's get into this. And I'll be doing my reactions as we go along. So let's start.
Folks, today I'm going to take you through a home building site in Florida so you can see just how crazy this Florida housing market downturn is getting. These builders continue to build homes in Florida as home prices are collapsing. This has the potential to be as bad as 2008, 2009 if these trends continue. So right now,
so first of all, hold up. We're only 18 seconds in, but he said it's going to be as bad as 2008, 2009. If anybody remembers what happened in 2008, 2009, during the housing crisis, the crash that happened, that was a huge major crash, especially for the Black community, right? We lost so many homes because of the subprime mortgage crisis. And if this is going to be anything reflective of that, it's going to hit the fan. And I don't it makes me grateful that I don't own a home, but at the same time, I'm also sad because I don't own a home. I'm gonna be 41 this month, and I don't own a home. I can't afford it. But at the same time, it also makes me kind of grateful that I don't, because then what if I did buy a home, and now the market's about to crash. And so this really just goes into, when it comes to homes, really, they should be to be lived in, not to just be investment properties. Homes are meant to be lived in. But I digress. Let's continue on.
Now, I'm in a Lennar home building community, and you can see there's just dozens and dozens of homes that are about to be completed. And these builders are doing big price cuts. There's some houses here in this community that are as cheap now as $250,000. And it's amazing how these builders just keep building into this downturn, because across the state of Florida, home values are now down 3.5% over the last year. But here in this area where I am, in Manatee County, they're down by 6% in the last year. And they're just going to keep dropping, folks, these home prices in Florida. A lot of people think this is some type of mini correction that's just going to solve itself in a couple months or a couple quarters. No, that's not what's happening. You could see here, these builders, they're just going to deliver even more homes, even more supply into this downturn, which is going to push prices down even more.
So let me tell you guys right now, in a community like this one in Florida, these houses, let's say we're back in 2023, right? Let's go back 2 years. These houses would run easily $400,000. Easy. The fact that these homes have dropped to $250,000 is massive. Massive. And so because we're now going into a downturn, it makes me think, oh my goodness, people who are, depending on their home prices, trying to make, a certain investment, it's not going to be good for them. Right? It's going to be interesting to see. My question, though, is, are rents going to follow? Because those of us who are renters, like myself, are the rents going to go down? Because some of these landlords are probably going to want to keep the rent just as high as it is, even though the home values go down. It's just so that, number one, they, let's say they buy a property after this downturn happens, and now let's say a house that was $400,000 is $250,000. Well, are they going to keep the same amount of rent that they were charging, or are they going to drop it? Well, if they keep it at the same amount, then of course, then they're going to be making even bigger profits. But at the same time, are they going to be able to, what about other people who may start renting at a lower price, right? Then they're going to have to compete with other people who are renting at a lower price. Would it cause them to drive down their rents because it's going to be almost nearly impossible to rent? when you have downturn like that, because then nobody's going to want to rent from you. It's going to be really interesting to see. Let's continue on.
And this is a mistake I see a lot of people in Florida say. I see it in the comment sections to my videos. They say, Nick, there's no downturn. I see the builders building everywhere. That means there's a boom. That was true a couple years ago, everyone, when a lot of people were moving to Florida. But now the inbound migration to Florida has dropped by 80%. So there's 80% fewer people moving to Florida today in 2025 compared to 3 years ago at the peak of the pandemic. And so when you see these builders building now, all it's going to mean is it's just even more unsold homes on the market, even more inventory on the market to push prices down into the future. And of course, one of the main reasons why people have stopped moving to Florida is because it became too expensive. The prices boomed about 50 or 60% over 3 years during the pandemic. And so now what you're seeing is these brand new homes from these builders, as cheap as $250,000 on the townhome. Some of these homes over there that are separated, detached, are more like $360,000, $370,000. These builders are now competing with the resellers who already own their homes in Florida. So say you moved down to Florida a couple years ago, right? And you bought your home from a builder, you bought your home from another seller in 2021, 2022. Well, now when you go to sell your home, is maybe you were called back to New York, maybe you work for JP Morgan, you're moving back into the office, maybe you just want to go back to friends and family in the Midwest. When you go to sell your home, you're now competing against these builders who are just cutting prices left and right, and not too far.
So hold up, let's stop there for a second. This is where I was wrong. I was under the impression that we're still under a population explosion. Apparently, we have dropped off 80% of people moving to Florida. Meaning a lot of y'all that were moving here because it was on and popping and everything was cheaper. Now you guys are like, oh, pump your brakes. No. We ain't going to Florida no more. Let's pump our brakes. And so I was wrong about that. Also, take into account, which I talked about before, a lot of these companies are now wanting you to come back inside the office. Meaning, if you're working remotely, let's say hypothetically, you live in New Hampshire and you're working remotely from your house, right? So you didn't have to go into the office. And so you thought, well, yeah, I can do this long term. So I can still make the same money that I'm making in New Hampshire. Let's say I'm making $120,000 a year, right? In New Hampshire. $120,000 in New Hampshire, but then you can keep that same job, making that same amount of money, but then you can work remotely and then move to Florida. So number one, you already have a new house and it's cheaper. So then your cost of living is lower, but even though you're making New Hampshire money, you're living in Florida with Florida prices, right? And so not only that, but you're also in a warmer climate. You don't have to deal with shoveling snow every winter, right? You don't have to worry about the cold weather. And so therefore it is better for you financially. Well, guess what? The companies are like, no, bring your ass back into the office. We want you back here because we got to make money off of our real estate at these offices because we need these tax breaks. So to screw over the worker, they're like, no, you come back. So you got to go, oh, snap, I can't live here no more. I'm going to have to sell my house. I'm going to have to move back to New Hampshire in order to be able to keep this job making that same amount of money. And so guess what? You have to sell your house. Well, guess what? You only have so much time to sell your house, which means that you're going to have to sell your house at a loss. You're going to have to sell your house at a loss, and then you're going to have to take your behind back up to New Hampshire and work from there, but you're not working remotely anymore. Yeah. And so now there's not as many people living in Florida. Or not as many people living in Florida, but what I mean is there's less people moving to Florida. They're pumping the brakes before they actually make the trip down here. Or some people have to move back. It's crazy.
far from here, folks. There's a listing that I found that the owner bought for $315,000 in 2022, 2023. They now have it on the market for $265,000. So what is that? That's around a $45,000, $50,000 loss on a home that was purchased for $315,000. I mean, this downturn in Florida, it's getting real. Sellers are starting to lose a lot of money. And I think a lot of people now in Florida do know that the downturn is happening. They know that prices are starting to drop, but they don't understand just how much they could drop into the future and just how severe some of the underlying metrics look. I mean, right now, there's 182,000 homes for sale in the state of Florida. I want you all to think about that. 182,000 homes on the resale market only, not even including the builders. 182,000 on the resale market. That's the highest level of supply in at least a decade on the resale market. And it's almost 50% more supply than the entire state of Texas. So
hold up, wait a minute. Hang on. We just don't have enough housing. We have all these homeless people. We just don't have enough housing. We need to build more affordable housing. We need more affordable housing. Not fair. We got the housing. We've had the housing. We just aren't utilizing it for people who need it the most. We've always said that we don't need to build more housing. We don't need to build more housing. We have it. You know how many available housing? We got all that available housing, and yet we still got homeless people out on these streets. Right? Seems like we need more of a housing first model. I just need to point that out.
So Texas is the state with the second most inventory. Texas has 120,000 homes. Florida has 180,000 homes with a significantly smaller population. And so that just puts into perspective how severe this downturn in Florida is getting, how much excess supply is on the market. And when you as a buyer or investor see that excess supply, it's telling you that prices are going to continue to drop. And folks, just look at this. Look at all these homes. Actually, all these homes, these are attached to each other. I don't know how I would feel about buying one of these attached larger homes. I mean, these are larger homes here that are attached. Like you share a wall with your neighbor. I'm not sure who's buying a floor plan like this, everyone. You guys can let me know whether you would buy, this is more a traditional townhome here, or a bigger home that's still attached to your neighbor. I mean, I think these builders are trying to save some money.
So that to me is just a really big duplex. That's what it is. That's a big old duplex. And instead of having to build it that's detached, it's just attached. I don't know. Would you rather spend a little extra to have it detached, or would you rather save money and put it attached? Let me know in the comments, but I don't know. It depends on the person's financial situation, you know? But yeah.
Maybe they're trying to, save on some costs by attaching these homes. Probably the foundation cost is lower. You don't need to have as much land per lot land per house, but it is just crazy how much construction there still is in the state of Florida. Now, here's the upshot to all this, everyone. Here's the good news that I'm going to deliver to you right now about what's going to happen in Florida and Florida's housing market and home prices over the next couple of years. They're going to get cheaper. They're going to continue to get cheaper. We at Reventure App, we're forecasting a statewide price decline of about 5.5% over the next 12 months. But in certain areas of Florida, like on the West Coast, we think the price declines could get as big as 8 to 9, maybe even 10% over the next year. And that's a big deal, everyone. A 10% decline in 1 year is really, really big. In the last downturn, prices in Florida dropped about 10% a year for 5 years. That's how they got to a 50% crash. So when you see potentially a 10% drop coming in your area in 12 months, that's huge. That is really, really big. And the good news is, I think we're going to start restoring affordability to Florida's housing market. Because the great thing about Florida prior to the pandemic is that it was a really affordable place to live. I mean, you could buy a house in Florida and you could make 35, 40 grand a year in 2019 and you could afford a house. I mean, I want you all to think about that. The typical mortgage payment on a house in Florida in 2019 was $1,000 a month, including taxes and insurance. Now it's around $2,500 a month. So the cost of owning a house in Florida in terms of your payments has gone up 150% since.
So hang on. Let me say something here. While, yes, the downturn will mean that these companies, houses are going to be cheaper. Don't be surprised if these corporations start buying up a lot of the housing and then start renting at 2025 prices, even though the houses are cheaper. I trust the snake to be a snake. And these rental companies, they're going to buy up, these corporations are going to buy up the housing. Let's say the house will be worth $400,000 in 2023. It's worth $250,000 now. They're going to charge you rent as if it's a $400,000 house. So yeah, the mortgage would be around $1,000. Let's say we get back to where a mortgage will be around $1,000. They're still going to charge you $2,500 because in your mind you're going to be expecting 2025 prices, even though the housing prices went back down to 2019. And then that's going to be their boom. The corporations are going to have their boom. They're going to be making record profits because they're going to own all those homes again. That's what I see happening. That's something he doesn't mention here. But I foresee, because we're so economically strapped right now, and the cost of living hasn't kept up with inflation, as well as I don't see food getting cheaper. I don't see fuel getting cheaper. I don't see utilities getting cheaper. I don't see a lot of those other things getting cheaper. So therefore, is it really going to, shift everything in the favor of working people? I don't think so. I think that the corporations are going to take advantage of this and keep the prices high while they own the houses, and then they have you as renters. So we're going to become more and more and more renters within the state. That's what I foresee. Maybe I'm just being a little bit more pessimistic in that way, but I trust a snake to be a snake. I trust the corporations to do what the corporations do. And plus, we're in the final stages of this empire. And so they're going to try to grab as much as they can before they give their last hurrah. That's what I see.
Since the pandemic, of course, the incomes have not gone up 150%. The median income in Florida is still around 70 grand. So just many of the locals here can't afford the houses. And that's the ultimate problem, right? When the locals can't afford the houses, when they can't even qualify for a mortgage, you're just going to have all this inventory sitting because the migration's dropped. The migration's down 80%. In 2024, we had the 5th worst year for Florida migration on record. People don't want to pay these high costs. People can't afford it. The hurricanes came through, scared some people away as well. Other people are getting called back into the office. There's all these forces now that are pulling people away from Florida back to the Northeast, back to the Midwest. And it's resulting in cheaper prices in Florida. The question is just how much cheaper are they going to get? And at the end of this video, I'm going to tell you how much I think prices are going to drop in totality in Florida's housing market, not just over the next year. Now you can see we have even more empty townhomes. These were recently completed. You can see no cars in the driveway. Empty, empty, empty. That looks like a construction truck right there. And finally, we have a couple cars over there. So finally, we have someone who actually might have bought one of these. And folks, I don't know if you can see that in the distance over there, but there's even more new construction behind the hill over there. There's multifamily apartments going up over there. They're clearing land over there for something else. It's amazing how the builders just keep going. The builders in their earnings reports, they're all pretty clear that Florida is the weakest housing market. CEO of KB Homes recently came out and said that. CEO of DR Horton's come out and said that Florida is their weakest market. But they're continuing to build, because if you're a builder, especially a big builder, you know, what you care about is not only maximizing your profit margin, but you also care about maximizing your penetration into the market. And so some of these builders are just going to keep building so they can keep market share, even if their margins keep going down further. Lennar actually reported their worst first quarter profit margin in a decade to begin 2025. But as you can.
So really the goal is, even though they're not going to be making as much, they still want to oversaturate the market so that by the time uptick in prices happens again, they can make record profits again. It's basically casting a wider net, even though you may not be catching as many fish. When the new fish come in, you have that big net. Then when it finally comes, then you can get that big payoff. So that's what it feels like is going on right now.
You could see here, this is a Lennar community. They're still building and they're cutting prices. They're giving mortgage rate buy downs. You know, you can get 5% mortgage rates when the market rate is 7%. Finally, here we're getting to a part of the community where some people actually live. You guys can let me know, would you ever buy in a builder community like this? You know, me personally, I'm probably not buying in a community like this, because I say to myself, what are you buying when you buy in a community like this? You're buying a structure, you're buying a wooden frame box, basically, your house, and the land under that house is really not worth anything because there's no supply constraints. The builder just over there can just build even more homes, exactly your same floor plan, and can cut the price further. So when land is this plentiful out here in Parrish, Florida, and many other parts of the US like Texas and Arizona and Tennessee, when land is plentiful and the builders just keep building, the value of your lot when you buy in a builder community is just can actually keep going down.
So also one of the things that I want to hone in on is the fact that he said that you're living in a wooden box. The homes that are built here are built 2x4s, plywood. These homes, do you expect these homes to last through a hurricane? They're made with cheaper materials. Yeah, they look nice at first, but just wait until another hurricane. Wait till a Cat 3 or higher makes landfall. Guess what, baby? Them matchsticks are going to be blown all over the land, right? And so the houses are made with cheaper materials because these home builders are trying to maximize profits. And then on top of that, you have all this land where they can build multiple homes, which means that your housing values aren't really going to matter much. And so you're essentially just paying for a paper house. And that paper house is not going to be valued much because you're going to have a bunch of available paper houses that in the supply is going to be great. But the thing is, like, the demand is going to be very small because will the demand go up? I honestly don't see it happening. I don't see a housing boom. Not until we actually change, the wage structure where, a majority of Floridians start to get a living wage. You won't see it. So, yeah, that's how I see it right now, at least.
And again, this is like the big misnomer I see so often is that people seem to think when you see home building, that that's a sign that your area is going up in value. No. In this part of the cycle, it's a sign that your area is going down in value. Very important you all understand that. If you see a lot of home building going on and you're part of Florida, that's a signal that there's excess supply on the market. Builders are cutting prices. They're giving mortgage rate buy downs. They're forcing the resellers on the market, the people who already bought, to have to cut their prices further. And so I just want you all to remember that very clearly, is that the builders are an indication of declining values over the next year or two, not appreciating values. And just to update you all on how much values are actually going down in Florida. So as I said earlier, 3.6% year over year drop, according to Zillow's seasonally adjusted home value index across the state. Now, the biggest declines are where I am here on the West Coast. Manatee County is down around 6%. This is where Parrish is, where I am right now.
So let's take a look at this. So I'm in Orange County, which is what is towards the north. Right here is down 1.6%, which is, it's a smaller amount. And then, you have Osceola County, which has a greater percentage. So Osceola is Point Siena, Kissimmee, St. Cloud, that area there. Then you have Lakeland, which, Polk County, which is Lakeland. And so you have these counties here, which things are a little bit more spaced out, right? And so because they're more spaced out, that means they have more areas to build more homes. And unfortunately for these places, because they have more area to build more homes, well, the values are going to go down more because, you have a higher supply, and that means but you have less demand. When you have higher supply and less demand, that means that the home values are actually going to go down. This is the issue with capitalism, is that, when you're focused your home more on, as an investment property versus a place to live in, well, then you're, more focused on, your housing values than anything, so you can sell it and make a profit, and then you can move into someplace, nicer. When in reality, the system, is nefarious, because these home builders and these banks and these companies, they're going to try to build more so that they can have a higher market share, so that when the uptick comes back again, they can make more profits. And really, it's really, bad for you, even though, you're the homeowner, right? It's because it's the corporations. The corporations are the ones that rule the day. They rule, all right as of right now. And that's the problem. And so it just sucks, because the thing is, like, some people who, they may, be trying to build equity and things like that, so that they can use it to, do repairs or save up for a rainy day, things like that. The problem is they can't now, because the home values are going under. And that's part of the system. So even if you own a home, are you still going to make out well? No, unfortunately, that's the way it is.
Bradenton, Palmetto, that's all Manatee County. Prices down 6%. Sarasota County, prices down 8.4% year over year. That's a big drop for 1 year. Charlotte County, where Punta Gorda is, prices down 9.5% over the last year. Collier County, Naples, prices down 6.5%. I know a lot of people thought like Naples wasn't going to get hit. Naples is getting hit. Prices are dropping in Naples. Up in Pinellas County, St. Petersburg, Clearwater, prices are down 5.9%. If we go out to Hillsborough County and Tampa, prices are down 3.1%. And now these value declines are even spreading to Central Florida, Lakeland, Orlando, Osceola County, values are dropping. And values are also dropping in South Florida. So in Palm Beach County, values are down over 3% in the last year. Palm Beach, that's a market I know a lot of you guys were looking in. Prices in Palm Beach are going down. Prices are also going down in Broward, and they are about to be down in Miami-Dade year over year. Miami-Dade is still up 0.7% year over year. However, it's declining month over month pretty heavily. Dropped around 0.5% last month, which annualizes to 6% in a year if it continues. So Miami is also now going down. Now this is interesting, everyone. Looks like someone bought one of these homes and turned it into a rental. This is the rare investor that is still buying in Florida. I'm gonna guess, how much is the rent for this house, do you think? Built maybe 2024, new build. Looks probably like a 3x3, 3x2.5.
So as far as rent goes, I personally would say the rent for this house right here would be about $2,400. I'm estimating about $2,400 in 2025 prices. Let's see what it comes out to.
$1,650. I'm going to say the rent on this is $2,100 a month. I'm going to say the cost to buy this house would be more like $2,400, $2,500 a month. At the end of this video, we're going to check and see if my guess was right. You guys can let me know how much you think this house would rent for. But in terms of brass tacks, you know, what you guys care about if you're a prospective buyer, how much are values going to drop in Florida in totality in this downturn? You know, we already know they're down 3.6% in the last year. They're down about 4.5% from peak. We think at Reventure, they're going to go down 5.5% over the next 12 months. So if that happens, it would bring it down to 10% from peak. You know, overall, I think it's realistic to expect a 20% price correction from here on out in Florida. You know, the values are still about 18%, 19% overvalued. A 20% price correction just to get it back to normal, just to get the market back to a level that's kind of within the long-term average. Of course, the market could correct below normal, right? That's what happened in the last downturn. Florida's housing market actually became very undervalued from 2009 to 2018. It was a deal to buy a house in Florida. You can see rarely is Florida, you know, fairly valued. Historically, it's either overvalued, undervalued, overvalued, or potentially going to be undervalued again. And the markets that could go down the most are the ones that are most overvalued. So an important point to consider if you're a prospective buyer in Florida is how overvalued prices are in your city and zip code. Because there's some big differences. There's certain parts of Florida's market right now which are only 10% overvalued. Like Sarasota has already had a pretty big correction. It's less overvalued than the state overall, whereas Palm Beach is very overvalued. So you're going to want to make sure you research the overvaluation rate for your county, your zip code in Florida. Because if you head back over there where I was filming before, the builder is selling a 4x3 home for $346,000 that's bigger than that house. So you could buy a home bigger than that house, newer than that house for $346,000, and your monthly payment would be about the same as the $2,600 a month in rent. And so this is just...
So what did I say? What did I say? I said 2,400, 2,600. Right? $2,600. These guys, man, I'm telling you, it's crazy.
This is just a great example of how the investors and the builders are just actually competing against each other, driving down the values, driving down the rents. However, clearly they need to go down by more to bring the demand back into the market. $2,600 a month in rent out here in Parrish, that's ridiculous. Don't be surprised if that ends up renting for $2,000 a month, or houses like that end up renting for $2,000 a month. But really, to understand how much values could really drop in your area in Florida, everyone, I would encourage you to check out.
All right. So, yeah, it's just crazy, you know, when it comes to the housing values, you know, and yet, you know, it's really going to get to a point where just because you have a house doesn't mean you're sitting on something that's guaranteed, because the system doesn't guarantee, you know, that your house maintains and keeps going up in value, or even keeps the same value, right? And then on top of it, we have a system where, you know, we don't have a housing first model. We don't have a housing for all. And so then it makes it even more dicey when, you know, your home loses value, or let's say you can't afford the mortgage anymore and you know, go into foreclosure. Or if you are a renter and you get, you know, you're a renter and you get evicted, right? So then guess what? You don't have a place to live anymore. You don't have that guarantee. And so, you know, that's one of the reasons why, you know, we need more of a housing first, housing for all model, so that everybody makes sure they have a place to live. And also, look, if everybody has a place to live, if everybody has guaranteed housing, well, then, you know, you don't have to worry about prices when it comes to, you know, housing anymore. You don't have to worry about home values. I'd rather us not have to worry about home values at all, because really homes really should just be for living in, you know, not for moving around money, right? That's what the rich do, right? So yeah, that was what do you guys think? You know, I would, of course, again, I'm gonna say I was wrong, especially when it comes to the population growth. The population has definitely slowed according to the data. And, you know, It may be kind of good for us, maybe for those of us who are locals, but at the same time, I just don't see it happening because the corporations are they got a taste of us, putting out more money for things like this. So now they're not going to want to go back. They're not going to want to make things cheaper, right? They're not going to want to recede in price. So they're going to want to keep that same, even though it's cheaper for them, they're going to keep it just as expensive so that they can make more money in the long run. That's what I think. So let me know your thoughts, guys, And by the way, I'm not a, real estate expert at all by any means. But, I'm just going by, my limited knowledge when it comes to this stuff. But I do think that we need to start having a more housing first model so that we can just get rid of homelessness, period. But thank you very much. Go ahead and like the stream. Thank you so very much. Let's get into the comments in the chat and we'll get into them. All right, so I'm gonna start off with this, just so that I don't miss out. So thank you for this, Roger. He says, so he's framing it as a bad thing because he's coming from the perspective of a capitalist mindset. I, however, see an opportunity for the local government to take it over to decommodify that housing. You see, when things are not done for a profit and are done to secure the social safety net, you work to have an abundance of it with no fear of it going to waste because you're serving the public interest. Here's an example. Every building must have a fire extinguisher on each floor for the just in case. That is serving a social interest. Fire extinguishers have an expiration date, which means you can go 15 years without the building catching fire, and you would have went through maybe 10 to 15 extinguishers where you had to throw them out. Capitalists look at it as that's wasted money. Why would I do that? But those who are concerned about the social consequences, aka public safety, sees the purpose of it is to secure your social safety net called your life so that it doesn't burn down. This is the same thing that Sergio was saying for years. All these people that leave New York end up coming back, or just leave the North, end up coming back because they see that if they don't have no community network in place to hold them down, then they're just going to end up packing up and leaving. Let's not forget that those are red states people who are moving to, and even though us Northerners talk about how crappy our state social safety net is, it's a hell of a lot better from what I understand than down south. This can be true in many ways. Sergio told me his mom's, when she went back to North Carolina and then came back to New York, said that if you go to the doctor, if you don't got the money right there, you can't see the doctor point blank. That is also true. It says, by the way, speaking of Sergio, I told him you guys got to get together and do another show. Call it the Bible episode, a nice talk about Christianity and how it relates to what's going on with today's politics, because he's serious about his Bible. It took a while before he came to how we see the whole situation with what's going on in Palestine, because he was going by what the Bible said in biblical doctrine. Oh, y'all can talk about that. He tells me something I can't challenge him because I don't know my Bible. Yet at the same time, he had quoted something from Christianity that was akin to what the rabbi told me, who I interviewed outside where we protested Robert Kennedy a couple of summers ago, had said in regards to being banned from the land of Israel because God told the chosen people they are not worthy and God has not called them back. These Jews in Palestine are not the original children of Israel, but I would just like to see you and him talk about what goes on in society today and how it relates to the Bible, what biblical times or whatever. I think that'd be a great episode. That would be interesting to talk about. And actually, in regards to that, It's kind of funny when we talk about what's going on in Palestine, because according to the Mosaic Law, which was the law that was written by Moses, one of the laws was that you must treat a foreign alien as your own, because in the Bible it actually talks about how you were once aliens in a land, being Palestine. And so now you must treat the foreign resident, the alien, as your own. Therefore, looking at what Israel is doing right now, they are literally the foreign aliens coming into a land that's not theirs, and they're trying to eject people from a land, whereas the Palestinians and the Jewish people originally were living together all in harmony and peace. JB, what are you trying to say? I'm trying to say that the Zionists in Israel are going against the Torah. They're disobeying God and the Torah. I read the Torah. The Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Leviticus, Exodus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. They're going against it. So not even God is with them. If you believe in God, if you believe in God, He's not with the Zionists. I said what I said. Go cry to Big Bowl Mama about it. All right, let's continue, Roger. Oh my goodness. Anyway, he says, I think I showed you before my plan for decommodified housing, an initiative in Florida that calls for 50% of the housing market in every county to be decommodified. Then you say the more of that you have, the higher the value of the remaining commodified housing will go up. So this basically means that you're taking half of the supply out of the market, which means that the housing is more rare. The more rare the housing, that means that it's going to go up in price. So the commodified housing will raise in price, but you're going to have 50% of the housing that's going to be decommodified, which means that you'll have housing available for everybody who can't afford housing at all. So that means everybody could be housed, but the people who can't afford housing to buy housing, whatever, then they'll actually have their home values go up. Uh-oh. It says, then you say that the more that you have, the higher value, the remaining commodified housing will go up. This is not the goal. That is the starting point of the goal, is to make all of it be commodified. When that happens, let's find another way to build wealth, not from something that is a necessity. Send that video to Jen and Peter, your fellow Floridians. It says, call Sergio up. We can have a Bible battle. Get your verses read. Nah, it's not going to be a battle, things like that. No. And Sergio is really, really chill. He's a really cool guy. And, it would be a discussion. And really, I think that it will really just be appealing to the humanity of people, and showing how, some people, they will use the Bible to their own selfish means. And it just goes to show, like, the United States will do whatever it can in order to push extremist views, in order to exploit other people. This is what they're doing. The Palestinians, they exploited Christians. Look what they did to, us freedmen, right? They have done this with Islam, where they literally recruited and created, a radical extremist wing of Islam in order to be able to destabilize areas in, West Asia. And it's not because that's naturally what Islam is, not by any means whatsoever. but because the United States does it in order to fulfill, because they see it as a means to an end, to fulfill their ends so that they can have corporations, and take control of that area. It's just like they're trying to do with Judaism by clinging to Zionism, just like they do with Christianity by creating this radical right-wing extremist Christianity that also partners with Zionism in order to get rid of an indigenous people on the other side of the Atlantic. It's crazy. It's disgusting, to be honest with you. But that's what this nation does. That's what the empire does. It's sad. But with that being said, let's get into the rest of the chat. Jacqueline says, this looks like housing for the middle class, affluent, not for the working class or the working poor. No, it's not. And this is why we need to decommodify housing. Thank you very much for that observation. It is very spot on. Janet says, you and Savvy are so cute when you laugh. Thank you. Cobra Commander says, let's hear the good news from what happens when you overproduce. And that's the funny thing is, like, when you have enough so that everybody's taken care of and nobody goes without, I say that's a good thing. Katie Lewis, who's also part of the Orlando chapter for RBN, says, not only does this discourage working Americans from taking steps to own their home, it makes it even cheaper housing for corporations to buy up and keep workers permanent renters. What did I just say? What did I say? I said it. And Katie Lewis was there to back me up. Rondo says, so what? Are they going to turn these into timeshares? I don't know. But let me tell you something. Timeshares have went out of style. I have not heard a damn thing about timeshares in the last 2-3 years, at least since 2020. I haven't heard about timeshares in a while. Because ain't nobody got no money for no timeshare. Ain't nobody sharing no time. No share, no time. Me no time, no share. No. What time is it? Ain't time for me to share. No. Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. Cobra Commander says, no, it's not. Called it. He said prices are going to drop. They're going to make money, y'all. Prices are not going to drop. What landlord lowers their rent and ownership? Yep, they're not. Landlords are parasites. If they can suck more blood, they're going to get more blood. That's exactly what they're going to do. Nibbler says, you guys are effed, but we can save the year 3000. Will we make it to the year 3000? I know the Earth will make it to the year 3000, but will we make it to the year 3000? That's the question. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Yep. Kill Your Grease Order says Black. I think it's Blackstone, but BlackRock will own it all. Yeah. These financial institutions are going to end up owning a lot of it. Let me see. Edward says BlackRock and others will buy up homes to prevent those from being first-time owners. Plus, you need the standard down payment of 20%, which the poor working class doesn't have to pay. Absolutely. Plus, you also got to have the good credit. Most of us ain't got good credit. You have to have decent, good credit in order to be able to be approved. Hell, you have to have either average or decent credit in order to be able to just rent. And a lot of us are living paycheck to paycheck. It ain't gonna happen. No, it don't work that way, baby. It's gonna be a lot more desperation in the near future. I told y'all what's going on with me. My goodness. All right. Katie says, love the educational live. No, thank you so much. That means a lot. Yeah. All right, everybody. So I'm going to head on out. I got to get going. A brother is hungry. Hang on. Roger. Oh, Lord, Roger. He says, I'm still imagining you and Sergio going toe-to-toe in a Bible battle like KRS-One and Big Daddy Kane at Barclays in the Brooklyn rhyming verses out of the book of Corinthians, Ezekiel, and Deuteronomy. Oh, Lord. No, it's Meher Shalahas Baz, not Meher Shalahas Baz. Oh my goodness. What is it? Nebuchadnezzar or Nebuchadrezzar? Oh my God. Is it Belteshazzar or Belteshazzar? Oh my gosh. Anywho. Yeah, definitely. Thanks, everybody. What word he said? All right, everybody. I'm going to head on out. Thank you so very much for joining, Peltier, for joining. This was a great discussion. Thank you so very much to everybody for joining in. If you guys, again, would like to contribute to my spot fund, then you guys probably can. I'll just put it in. I'll just put it in the chat if you guys want to. If you guys want to also just become a patron on Patreon, that's also linked in the description down below. Or my Cash App's down there too as well if you guys want to offer any assistance. Also, the Makwana, I'm going to put that also in the description as well so you guys can support them as well. They're doing great work, especially when it regards to the environment. Solidarity with all of my native and indigenous brethren out there. You know, even though I'm not indigenous or native, I got love for y'all. You guys are doing the damn thing out there and making sure that we still stay alive on this planet. Thank you. It means a lot. So yeah, appreciate it. And I'm going to be I'm supposed to be doing a show. I'm going to be on Sabby and JB show this Thursday. It's going to be a really good show. Look, I'm gonna give you guys just a little hint about what we're going to talk about this Thursday on Sabby and JB show. We're going to be talking about Black businesses. It's going to be an interesting one. I hope you guys stay tuned for that one on RBN. So thank you so very much for tuning in. Everybody, we got to get going. What am I going to eat? I don't know, man. You know what I'm hungry for? I haven't had in a while. I haven't had a cheeseburger in a while. I know I'm not really supposed to be having it, but I'm hungry for it, man. Damn it. Anyway, like I always say, water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Smoke them if you got them. Drink them if you got them. If you ain't got them, then watch something funny because joy is revolutionary. I love you guys for watching. Thank you so very much to everybody for tuning in. Mwah. Forehead kisses. Give you with them soft forehead kisses right there at the temple, right there on the forehead, just so you can feel the love. That's right. It's all about love in here. I'll see you guys later. Y'all have yourself a good night. Deuces, Bruces. Thank you so very much for watching my channel, and I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, You can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much, and you can watch more of my content here. Mwah. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.